Huang Yueli's face was plastered laterally onto his chest, and she could clearly felt sturdy, robust chest muscles beneath that thin piece of material, firm and strong, giving off a pure man's powerful presence. The warm breath caressing the back of her ear made her felt ineffably reassured. A slender and delicate hand was pressed against Li Moying's chest, wanting to push him away but eventually softly resting on top without any strength. Li Moying noticed that she had softened up and took things one step further as he hugged her without letting go. Huang Yueli allowed him to hug her for a while but eventually realized that something was not right and used her strength to push him. "Have you hugged enough or not?" "Not," Li Moying replied resolutely. Huang Yueli's mouth twitched. "Earlier we agreed on this, that you will not get fresh with me, otherwise." All right, I've hugged enough. Earlier I was just too excited." "Leah, don't you have a bit of compassion at all?" When Li Moying heard what she said, he immediately took a step backward as he raised both hands in a surrender position and at the same time, displayed an innocent look as he grumbled. Huang Yueli pursed her lips, looking at him in disbelief, deeply feeling that she seemed to have made a wrong decision, as if she had led Wolf into the house. "You guarantee that you will not do anything to me that you're not supposed to do?" "I guarantee." Huang Yueli stared at him for a moment more, and although she didn't feel too assured, but Li Moying's terrifying look when his illness acted up stayed in her memory, and plus the fact that she knew at the back of her mind that when this man acted shamelessly, no matter how she chased him away, it was fruitless, so she might as well agree to his request. She thought for a moment when she lifted the blanket on the bed and folded it into a thin divider before placing it onto the middle of the big bed. It looked like a small mountain diving the big bed into two halves. "You will take one half and I will take the other half. No one is allowed to cross the boundary." Li Moying looked at the blanket on the bed and was rendered speechless. At the same time he couldn't help but lament that his little fox was really getting smarter and smarter, and more difficult to cheat her. Like this current example, if he wanted to get fresh with her, the difficulty had increased by quite a bit. He nodded. "Right, I'll listen to whatever you say. As long as you agree to take me in." Huang Yueli was satisfied. The negotiation between the two of them wasted quite an amount of time, and at this moment, the night was no longer young. Huang Yueli climbed onto the inside of the big bed to lay down, and she pulled the blanket up, covering up to her chin as a pair of big eyes looked around alertly at the man on the other side of her bed. Li Moying swept her a glance as his lips curled upwards. "Leah, it's already summer. Don't you feel hot covering up so much?" "Not hot. Really? But your forehead seems clammy. Looks like you're sweating quite a bit. You saw it wrongly." "All right, then treat it as I've seen it wrongly." Li Moying looked at her tensed expression as his mood turned for the better. If it was said that he was disappointed earlier because he didn't get to take advantage of his little fox, then now his heart was filled completely with happiness. Looking at Huang Yueli stretching out her little paw secretly to wipe off the sweat on her forehead, Li Moying's smile on his lips became deeper. Just thinking that he would be able to see her cute expressions every day already made him very satisfied. He didn't insist of having any substantial relationship with her. After all, she would be his sooner or later. Li Moying took off his outer robe and boots under her careful watch and laid properly on the other side of the big bed, with no intention of crossing the boundary that Huang Yueli had set up. "You can also listen on." Li Moying's deep voice was heard. "Good night, Leah." "Good night." Huang Yueli responded quietly. She stretched out her finger and pointed as the light on the table was extinguished immediately and the room was totally pitch black. Huang Yueli was initially anxious, worried that after Li Moying came onto the bed, he would do something, so in the darkness, she held on tightly to the blanket and refused to let go. At the same time, her ears perked up listening to every single movement coming from Li Moying's side. But very quickly, Li Moying's breathing became lighter and lighter and longer and longer. Apparently, he had already entered dreamland. What? He slept even faster than me. Still claim that he can't sleep every day? Could he be lying to me? Huang Yueli turned her head to the side and using the dim light shining in from the window, she looked at the man who laid beside her. Li Moying laid quietly, both eyes shut and his long eyelashes resembling a little fan drooped down. The usually stern and overbearing man looked extremely relaxed and tranquil at this moment, and his lips maintained an upward curl. Huang Yueli felt unbalanced. She was anxious for an entire night and she couldn't even sleep while the man who claimed that he had insomnia slept this well. She couldn't help but stretched out her hand and pinched his upright nose bridge. Li Moying's eyebrows puckered up but he didn't wake up, only subconsciously shaking his head. Just like a pig, Huang Yueli didn't manage to wake him but realized that she was acting senseless, so she withdrew her hand. The room was very quiet, only with the light breathing sound coming from the man lying beside her, ranging rhythmically, like a lullaby. Huang Yueli unknowingly also fell asleep. In the middle of the night, Huang Yueli suddenly woke up with a start as she rubbed her tummy. She realized that she seemed to have drank too much water last night and was woken by the urge to pass urine. She wanted badly to relieve herself, but Li Moying was lying on the outside side of the bed, and if she wanted to get out, it was very inconvenient. Huang Yueli bit her lips as she hesitated, but as she couldn't control her urge, she could only climb softly and quietly over. As she was climbing past Li Moying's body, she leaned halfway over and using her elbow to support her body, one leg first surmounted over Li Moying's body. Just as she was about to move her other leg over, Li Moying seemed to be alerted by her huge movements as he let out a light yen sigh and his arms also moved. Just nice, it swept across Huang Yueli's waist. His build was lofty, whereas Huang Yueli was maintaining a position like a little puppy leaning on the bed without using much strength. His arm pressed against her waist as she fell forward entirely, falling flat onto Li Moying's chest. Woo dash! Huang Yueli's long and delicate nose banged onto the man's stiff chest and immediately felt a painful sensation, her tears almost flowing out. She blinked her eyes and managed to suppress the painful feeling with great difficulty, but then she realized that her position was very embarrassing. She was actually leaning entirely onto Li Moying's body and both her legs were straddled on the two sides of Li Moying's body, riding just on top of his waist, and the two mounds on her chest was pressing onto Li Moying's chest. Not only that, Li Moying's arm was placed onto her little butt. This position simply made the two of them stuck together in all angles. Huang Yueli's brain buzzed as she felt that her head was fuming with smoke. You can also listen on. For that one moment, Huang Yueli had thought that Li Moying was definitely woken up by her and he was up to mischief to make her fall onto his body in an attempt to take advantage of her. But when she raised her head to take a look, she discovered that Li Moying was still in deep sleep and the rhythm in his breathing didn't have much changes. Besides that, perhaps he felt a heavy thing pressing against his chest making him uncomfortable, so he frowned slightly. His neat brows creased together and that expression seemed to hint a sense of grievance. This made Huang Yueli felt a sense of guilt for disturbing him in his dreams. Leaning down like that would really made Li Moying wake up. If he really awoke at this moment and happened to see her leaning on his body in such an awkward position, Huang Yueli didn't even need to think before knowing how he would respond. That man would definitely give an antipathic look while ridiculing her. I already knew you were lusting after me and you refused to admit it. Look at this, I'd just fallen asleep and you already couldn't control your urge. Not only just laying your paws on me, your entire body is pressing on me. Are you preparing to use force? Thinking of this, Huang Yueli started to become anxious. No way, she absolutely could not allow Li Moying to grab hold of this handle against her. Moreover, she really couldn't control it any longer. Huang Yueli could only force herself once again, using her palms to support against the big bed to lift her body up. At least she didn't want to stick to Li Moying like that. However, just as she just got up, the arm resting on her but suddenly used force and pressed her down again. Huang Yueli fell once again onto the man's chest, as she always swore vulgarities. This Li Moying really was pretending to sleep. She stretched out her hand to pinch Li Moying's face, furiously ranting, still pretending to sleep. Wake up and let me go down. Silence. In reply was Li Moying's peaceful breathing. Really didn't wake up. Huang Yueli opened her eyes wide as she looked left and right at this man, sensing that he really didn't seem like he was awake. She grew even more melancholic, already sleeping and still cannot forget to take advantage of others. What kind of man are you? Since Li Moying didn't wake up, she swallowed back the words of criticism that she had prepared. It would be better if she could slip away. She supported her body up once again in an attempt to nudge away, but in the end, she was pushed down again. Huang Yueli was so angry that she wanted to bang the wall, but very quickly, she discovered that something far from good was happening. The several times when she got up and was pushed down again led their bodies to rub against one another, and a certain part of Li Moying uncontrollably had some reaction. Huang Yueli felt a scorching heat jabbing against her tummy and her face flushed bright red and after a while, turning pale white. "You're really a beast." She felt like weeping but had no tears. Luckily it was only a subconscious reaction from Li Moying's body and he himself had not awoken. Huang Yueli knew that she could not do it forcefully again, otherwise if she really woke Li Moying up, based on the current position and Li Moying's condition, she had a bad sense of foreboding. She thought for a moment as her hand stretched to her back and started to pry open Li Moying's fingers. She first needed to move this big hands out of her way, otherwise, it would end up in tragedy every single time. As she was in this doggy position, she was totally reliant on her arm's strength to support her body. As her hand moved to her back, it was unavoidable as she totally sprawled against Li Moying's body. You can also listen on. Besides that, she was using all her strength to wrestle at his arm while rubbing against his body continuously. Huang Yueli could clearly felt that underneath that man's body, his body had an obvious raise in temperature. Li Moying, who was in deep sleep, frowned tightly and his breathing became faster, as though he was about to wake up. Huang Yueli grew anxious and suddenly using strength, she managed to shake off Li Moying's arm towards the side. Woo! Li Moying discontentedly rubbed his head against the pillow as his eyelids started to have some movements. Huang Yueli flipped over and got off the bed, while turning around anxiously to look at his expression. Luckily, Li Moying was in deep sleep today and he didn't even wake up despite the commotion. She hurriedly turned around and ran out of the room, not even bothering to put on her shoes. Huang Yueli ran to the next room to settle nature's call, and as she was on her way back, she met with trouble again. Earlier when she got out, it was with great difficulty that she managed to straddle over Li Moying's body. If she were to go back to sleep now, didn't it meant that she would need to straddle over his body once more? Her lips twitched as her heart was filled with melancholy. Seriously, it was a troublesome thing to have a man in the room. If she knew about this earlier, she would never had agreed to Li Moying's request. She decided that early tomorrow morning, she would tell this fellow that she regretted her decision and not allow him to continue staying here. If he dared to enter casually again, she would prepare a huge pile of mechanisms in the bedroom and bury him alive. Huang Yueli secretly clenched her fists, thinking that her idea was just too great. But before she could enter the room, from afar, she heard a crisp pong sound coming from the room. Huang Yueli went into a blank and hurriedly ran back into the bedroom. Upon entering the room, an intermittent moaning was heard from the bed. Woo, hum. Huang Yueli quickly snapped her fingers and all the oil lamps in the room lit up at the same time. On the big bed, Li Moying's forehead creased tightly and his face was pale, bearing a painful expression. His forehead was drenched with sweat as he kept tossing around in bed but eventually didn't open his eyes. By the bedside counter was a porcelain vase which had already dropped onto the ground and turned into smithereens. Probably it was swept onto the ground when Li Moying unconsciously tossed around in bed. Huang Yueli ran to the bedside and saw his face flushed red as her heart was filled with terror. How did it become like this? When she left earlier, this man was still sleeping like a pig and no matter how she squandered around, he had no reaction at all. But now she had just left for a less than a quarter of an hour, so why did he? Huang Yueli placed her hand on his face as she patted gently. Li Moying, wake up. What happened to you? However, not only did Li Moying not wake up, he also cast her hand aside as he mumbled unclearly, "No, don't, it's dangerous. Don't go over. Don't go over." Huang Yueli blinked. Li Moying, you're having a nightmare. Don't be scared, wake up and you'd be fine. She stretched her man onto Li Moying's chest and massaged him to appease him, hoping to calm him down, but his chest was still agitatedly moving up and down, as though he was tangled by the deepest and most horrifying nightmare, unable to disengage himself. Huang Yueli was indecisive, not knowing whether she should make him wake up. She heard that if one were to forcefully wake someone with soul detachment illness when their symptoms acted up, it would cause a second damage to their soul and might deepen their illness. But if she didn't wake him up, Looking at Li Moying in this manner made Huang Yueli's heart ached badly. You can also listen on. What exactly was he dreaming about? What would have made such a strong man become so terrified, so weak? Had he dreamt about his past when he was young? Don't. Li Moying's moaning started again and seemed even more agitated than before as his hands unconsciously stretched outwards, waving about in mid-air as though he was trying to grab hold of something, but no matter how he tried, he wasn't able to. Huang Yueli grabbed his hands and spent quite an amount of strength to hold him down. Calm down a little. What did you dream about? All right, no matter what had happened, it's all in the past. Sensing her presence nearby, Li Moying seemed to calm down a little, but he had just quieted down for a quarter of an hour when he suddenly started to shout out loud again. Don't go over, come back. You don't believe that I can protect you? Little fox, come back right now. Little fox. Who was he calling? Hearing this nickname, Huang Yueli couldn't help but went into a daze. Because this nickname was all too familiar to her and had drawn back a portion of her memories from her previous life. In the past, Mu Chengying used to love calling her this, and she had always felt that this nickname seemed to be calling a pet and had on several times forcefully protested against this, but unfortunately that man was just too used to be overbearing and he totally ignored her protests. After some time, she had gotten used to it. But now hearing this nickname seemed as if it was a lifetime ago. Huang Yueli was distracted for a while when she suddenly felt a tight grip on her wrist and immediately lost balance and fell once again onto Li Moying. You, let me go. Huang Yueli's wrist was held on tightly by him and she didn't manage to pull it back no matter how she tried. Not only did Li Moying not listen, he even flipped around and pressed her below him. Not letting go. If I do, you'd run away and I'd never get a chance to hold on to you. What? Wu dash. Huang Yueli had yet to say out the things she wanted when Li Moying had already shut her lips up. A familiar scorching kiss instantly took her breath away. Li Moying's kiss was deep and avid as it continuously explored and searched for her sweet fragrance. Huang Yueli subconsciously struggled for a while, but very quickly she became aware of something and started to relax. After Li Moying had enough of kissing, the grip on her wrist loosened as his body fell sideways towards the left side and leaned sideways onto the pillow, not moving a single bit. Huang Yueli put her finger below his nose to check if he was breathing and discovered that he had indeed went into a lethargic sleep once again, just like the previous times when he had kissed her after his soul detachment illness had acted up. What kind of situation was this? She couldn't understand no matter how much she thought. But at least she knew one thing, which was when Li Moying said he could sleep well beside her, it seemed to be true. She had just left for a while and he actually had a nightmare. If he usually slept alone and he was often tormented by nightmares, then he was too pitiful. Huang Yueli's heart softened. Forget it, since he still seemed trustworthy tonight, if he could continue to maintain this condition then she would split her bed into half for him, to do a good deed every day. The next morning when Li Moying woke up, he seemed to have forgotten what had happened last night. He felt refreshed and was in high spirits. Right after he teased Huang Yueli for quite a bit, he left early in the morning. Huang Yueli also stepped out as this was the official first day of lessons after the new students' enrollment. Even though these classes was of no use to her, but after all it was the first day so she still had to go and show face. She was considered late as the classroom was already filled with the batch of new students. You can also listen on. Besides the 100 students who were enrolled along with her during the entrance examinations, there were also specially enrolled students from other regions and exchange students from other academies, filling the big classroom to its maximum capacity. Everyone excitedly whispered to one another's ear. But just at the moment when Huang Yueli walked in, the entire classroom turned silent. As the saying went, one's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. Huang Yueli's reputation now was like the sun at midday, and in the entire Celestial Light Academy, she was a widely known legendary character. At present, everyone's sights fell onto her and the minute she appeared, everyone was in awe of her presence. Huang Yueli gazed fixedly at the moment she found a seat at one corner of the classroom and walked in. It was until she had sat properly as the classroom's silence was broken and bustled with noise and excitement once again. The position which Huang Yueli sat at allowed her to sense that many casted various kinds of gazes, and amidst them, she could also heard some others discussing about her. She frowned slightly as she felt slightly disturbed. But luckily, it was soon time for class, and after the academy's teacher had reached, the classroom quietened down. The curriculum was exactly as boring as she had imagined, and after Huang Yueli patiently sat through one lecture, she was preparing to slip away. Whoever knew that just as she was leaving, someone from the side suddenly called her name. Bai Ruoli. You are Bai Ruoli, right? Huang Yueli raised her head and saw a 17 or 18-year-old young lady standing right in front of her, and this female student had a third-grade badge pinned onto her chest area, as she arrogantly looked downwards at her. You are. Huang Yueli's brows creased slightly. The female student said, 3 days later, young Master Yuan will be hosting a banquet to celebrate the start of a new term. You are lucky to have received an invitation. Take it. She threw out an invitation onto the table in front of Huang Yueli. Your luck's not bad. A new student from a small country actually received an invitation from young Master Yuan after joining the school, humph. But don't be too full of yourself. It's just because you have some innate talent, but you're only at third stage realm, and there are people who are much better than you in the academy. At the banquet, there are also other large families who have many experts who had already graduated, so my advice to you is to tuck your tail between your legs and behave properly. Huang Yueli raised her brows as she took a look at that piece of paper on the table, but didn't put out her hand to receive it. I'm sorry, this, lady. You're indeed rather arrogant, and your eyes are grown on top of your eyebrows, but unfortunately, I don't even know who you are. What's the meaning of this? You don't know who I am? The female student bore an expression of humiliation. You don't even know who I am? Just as what the words mean. Hasn't your mother ever taught you that when you're speaking to others, you should always introduce yourself first? The female student's face turned redder. She had always been rather famous in Celestial Light Academy, and whenever other people saw her, they all became a yes-man, including those heirs from large families. In the end, this country bumpkin from a small country actually didn't recognize her. And she even used a tone of disdain to talk to her. She clenched her teeth angrily. You're looking for death. How dare you speak to me like this? She struck out a slap, but before she could even landed it onto Huang Yueli's face, she saw her icy cold smile. The female student quivered and suddenly recalled that this new top student was not like the ordinary students who she always bullied. She was someone with outstanding innate talent and a genuine top 10 martial arts stage practitioner. In terms of ability, she wasn't her match at all. You can also listen on. That female student quickly tried to withdraw her hand but found out in shock that she could not control her own hand at all. A strange burst of energy seemed to be controlling her as her hand struck out towards the opposite direction. Slap dash. A crisp slap was heard as it reverberated within the classroom. But this slap wasn't casted onto Huang Yueli's face but landed onto the female student's own face. This slap was both hard and hurried as the female student's face instantly turned red and swollen. Her eyes popped out with a face of disbelief, apparently became dull from the slap. It was after a while before she responded as she screeched loudly, You hit me. A wretched lass from the countryside like you dare to hit me? Do you know who I am? Huang Yueli smiled as she replied with a face of innocence, I say, this senior sister, is there something wrong with your brain? I already said earlier that I don't know you. Why are you still asking me if I know who you are? Are you trying to be comedian? Moreover, how did I hit you? Since when did I hit you? Don't anyhow say things to frame me. So many classmates are here, witnessing with their own eyes. You knew that you had said things to offend me, so you slapped yourself to apologize. TSK, you've really staked your all. On account of your good attitude to admit you own mistake, I shall forgive you. You, female student was so angry that she couldn't say a word. Why would she slap herself for no reason? It was obviously this wretched lass in front of her, relying on your higher ability and using some heterodox skills to control her movement. She didn't believe that those present could not tell, but the truth was she had indeed slapped herself. Moreover, if this matter were to spread, she would be the one embarrassed. Because her potential was at third stage realm 7th level. She was much higher than this new top student. Although Huang Yueli was in the martial arts stage top 10, her ability would definitely be much stronger than her. But if she wanted to control her movements, that did not mean that her strong ability was enough to do it. She should also have a much higher cultivation level than hers. But now she was being controlled by a new student whose cultivation level was much lower than her, not to mention directly slapped on the face. This was totally embarrassing. The female student held on to her face as her rage flew into the skies, but she didn't know what she should do. To fight, she obviously couldn't win against her and would only be tortured. But if she were to leave, she would feel unjust, and moreover she couldn't afford to throw her face away. Huang Yueli cast her a glance with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Senior sister is still not leaving? Do you feel that your apology earlier lacks sincerity, so you're willing to slap yourself a few more times to apologize properly to me? Female student was stunned as she stared at her. You're thinking about, scram. Huang Yueli had lost her patience as she hissed out this word in between her teeth. Her imposing presence also started to be unleashed. Female student was so scared that she almost pissed in her pants in terror, and her back was drenched in sweat. Her legs trembled as her eyes turned red and she sprinted out of the classroom. Huang Yueli casually picked up that invitation and threw it by the side. Just at this moment, another female student beside her called out, "Miss Bai, wait a minute. Don't throw, this cannot be thrown away." She stretched out her hand and caught hold of the falling invitation as she placed it back onto the table in front of Huang Yueli. Huang Yueli turned around and realized that the person who had spoken was actually Song Yaru. This daughter from Sky Cloud City's large family had rather outstanding innate talent, and originally she should have been the new top student for this batch, but because of her appearance, she could only settle for second place. You can also listen on. Although she had the arrogance that belonged to one of a large family clan, she showed no arrogance in victory and no despair in defeat. Even after losing to Huang Yueli in the entrance examinations, she congratulated her in grace and was considered as an upright practitioner. Huang Yueli's impression towards Song Yaru was rather good, and when she saw that it was her who spoke out, she turned around and asked, "I don't have any intention to attend that banquet, so why can't I throw it away?" Song Yaru turned around to take a look, and upon seeing that female student had been long gone, she sat beside Huang Yueli and whispered, "Do you really not recognize that female student earlier?" Huang Yueli shook her head puzzledly. "Why? Is she very powerful? I can tell that her cultivation is not bad, but her actual battle ability isn't even worth mentioning, so she probably wouldn't even be able to squeeze into the top 50 in the martial arts day." Song Yaru replied, "Her ability naturally isn't comparable to yours, but her status is not simple. Ordinary students were afraid when they see her, and even those top few students in the martial arts stage are all very courteous towards her." "Why is this so?" Huang Yueli asked curiously. Song Yaru answered, "Because she is called Lu Zi, the eldest young miss in Sky Cloud City's Lu family. More importantly, she is Celestial Light Academy's Honorary Association's member." "Honorary Association? What's that?" Huang Yueli asked puzzledly. Song Yaru explained, "There are very few teachers in Celestial Light Academy but many students. So most of the time the students require themselves to self-manage, hence the formation of this honorary association organization. However, the members in this organization are not those with the best innate talent but those whose family backgrounds are the best. As there are many Celestial Light elders who are from large family clans in Sky Cloud City, their children and descendants hold special privileges in Celestial Light Academy, hence they became members of the Honorary Association. Honorary Association members each have an elder behind them, and the resources that they enjoy in the academy are different from the others. Although you are now in the top 10 of the martial arts stage, but after all you don't have a base, and if you offend the Honorary Association members, it will become a disadvantage for you." Song Yaru unreservedly told Huang Yueli everything she knew. After Huang Yueli heard these, she smiled obliviously. "What is this honorary association? It's simply a playtime game for little kid. I think it's because Principal Jiang don't want the sex elders to find an excuse to partake in the academy's internal affairs, so he especially did this to baffle them, right?" Song Yaru heard her bold words and was scared till her face turned slightly pale. "Miss Bai, I know your innate talent is high, but you really shouldn't ignore the honorary association. There are just a few people like Lu Zi who has family background but lack actual ability. Most of the honorary association members are very powerful. For example, the martial arts stage ranking number 1's young master Yuan, he is personally helming as the honorary association's president. Huang Yueli smiled. What martial arts number 1? Hasn't he already been defeated by the new senior brother Li? Song Yaru hurriedly put her finger to her lips and made a hush action. Stop talking about it. You dare to even talk about this. This is the first time that young Master Yuan had been defeated since he entered the academy, and no one dares to even bring this matter up. She paused for a moment and continued, anyway, this honorary association's opening term celebration would normally only invite those large families' direct line of descent to attend. You're not from Skycloud City but yet still managed to receive the invite means young Master Yuan values you and specially sent you this invitation. If you were to reject, then you will not only offend Lu Zi, but also young Master Yuan. How will you continue staying in the academy by then? You can also listen on. Huang Yueli laughingly shook her head when she heard that. It was unimaginable that a small place like Celestial Light Academy had such complicated interpersonal relationships. It was just a so-called martial arts stage number 1 ranking person. So if she had offended him, then so be it. What was there to be afraid of? Huang Yueli smiled and said, Senior Sister Song, thank you for your kind intentions. I understand now. I still have something on, so I'll make a move first. Ari, Junior Sister Bai, wait. Song Yaru realized that she didn't bother putting this matter into her heart and became very anxious as she wanted to chase up to her, but she wasn't able to and could only sigh while shaking her head. Hi, this Junior Sister Bai, she's even haughtier than me. For practitioners to have a drive within is good for cultivation, but it is easily broken if it's too rigid. She's just too arrogant, and if she really offended someone who she cannot afford to offend, then her future will be ruined. Huang Yueli, however, didn't register this matter into her head. Honestly speaking, she didn't have the intention to look down on anyone, and if the members of the honorary association sincerely wanted to befriend her and politely invited her to attend the banquet, she wouldn't even put on airs and refuse to attend. However, Lu Zi's attitude earlier showed everything. These so-called honorary members despised her from the deepest depths of their heart, so if she really went, she would become the object of taunting. Although her ability was there for everyone to see and could instantly slap their faces to teach them a lesson, but what's the point? She had no intention of putting up a monkey show for others to see. However, it was as though heavens wanted to go against her as well. Just as Huang Yueli was leaving the first graders' classroom, she collided head-on with Li Shuer, who was dressed in a long green dress. The ordinary members in the academy normally wore the school uniform, and only those who held special statuses in the academy could wear other cloths. Li Shuer's flowy long dress was especially attention-seeking among the crowd, so it was difficult for Huang Yueli to not notice her. Li Shuer proceeded over directly and blocked her way. Junior Sister Bai, today's classes have yet to finish. Why are you leaving already? And where are you going to? Huang Yueli replied coldly, what's it got to do with you? Li Shuer replied, what do you mean it has nothing to do with me? I've heard that you offended Senior Sister Lu from the Honorary Association under everyone's eyes and even hit her. On account that we are all from South Yu Kingdom, I specially came to remind you so that you don't offend someone unknowingly. From the looks of it now, you seem to already know that you've met with some big trouble and preparing to seek refuge. Li Shuer bore a gloating smile, displaying an extremely pleasant mood. In reality, she almost wanted to burst out laughing. She had suffered so many setbacks from Huang Yueli and was still frustrated that she had no way of exacting revenge on her, but who knew that Huang Yueli actually dared to put on airs in front of Li Zi. This time round, it saved her a lot of trouble. Whoever offended the members of the Honorary Association would normally be in great trouble, wasn't it? She just needed to sit one side and wait for Huang Yueli's bad luck would do. Huang Yueli cast a glance at her as she laughed grimly. Seek refuge? I only feel that the curriculum was too boring and am preparing to go and cultivate on my own. Please step aside and stop wasting my precious time on cultivation. Li Shuer sneered. TCH, what act are you trying to put on? Don't I already know? I'll tell you. Think, After Lu Zi left your classroom, she was so angry that she broke a number of cups and even swore to everyone that the two of you cannot exist together. Even after Huang Yueli heard what she said, there was no change in her expression at all. She felt too lazy to talk any further with Li Shuer and tried to bypass her directly. You can also listen on. However, Li Shuer still refused to budge and continued blocking her way. Why aren't you talking? Are you afraid? Of course, you're just a newcomer and have no base in Celestial Light Academy at all. There's also no one to be your backing, so even if your innate talent is slightly better, but after you've offended Li Zi, our senior sister, your future is hard to tell. Perhaps you might even get into trouble immediately. Huang Yueli swept her an icy glance. Whether I'll get into trouble or not, that's hard to say. But if you don't scram now, I can guarantee that you will get into big trouble immediately. You, Li Shuer sneered. What can you do to me? Let me tell you this. The reason why the Honorary Association had sent an invitation to a country bumpkin like you is because they're giving me face. Young Master Yuan had personally invited me to be his partner in the banquet. If you dare to even touch a single strand of my hair, you're finish. Young Master Yuan's partner, Huang Yueli stared at her seemingly in deep thought. Li Shuer saw her hesitation and mistaken that she was afraid as she puffed out her chest in delight. That's right. I'm the armament apprentice with the most innate talent which had not appeared for the last few decades, and even young Master Yuan sees me in different light. Not someone with your mere quality could compare with. Huang Yueli shook her head bearing an expression of sympathy. Sigh, when we were in South Yu Kingdom, I had thought that although 7th Princess's innate talent wasn't that high, but at least she knew what the sense of propriety, justice, integrity, and honor were. But I could never have imagined that once we reached Sky Cloud City, you don't even want your reputation. By Ruoli, what do you mean? Li Shuer's expression changed immediately. Huang Yueli laughed as she replied, just as what the words meant. You said it yourself that you're hugging young Master Yuan's thigh to become his partner. TSK, in uglier terms, this is also known as illicit sexual relationship. To think that you're so delighted over this, do you even have a sense of shame? Moreover, do you really feel that young Master Yuan would give up on marrying so many other ladies from the large families in Sky Cloud City and marry you instead? Li Shuer's face turned ugly immediately because what Huang Yueli mentioned was exactly the thing which she worried about the most. In the past, those young masters from large families all lowered themselves to serve her. But Yuan Ziyu was different. With his status and ability, many ladies from Sky Cloud City wanted to get married to him, and Li Shuer was just not enough. So this round, she was proactive, and although Yuan Ziyu was now interested in her, but Li Shuer was constantly worried that she would be ditched anytime. But she would never reveal these in front of Huang Yueli. Young Master Yuan is very good to me and you're just jealous of me. That can't be helped. Ever since you've come to Sky Cloud City, that second brother of mine had never appeared once. Could it be that he found you too troublesome and already prepared to ditch you? Now there's no man to protect you. But even if he came, it's useless. Just that little capability of him, he could only show off his might in South Yu Kingdom. If he comes to Sky Cloud City, it's not even worth mentioning. Huang Yueli raised her brows in surprise, not expecting Li Shuer to say that of Li Moying. But she reversed her thoughts and immediately understood what had happened. When Li Shuer had returned to South Yu Kingdom, Li Moying had already went back to his sect and she had never seen him strike at all. So in her impression, this second brother of hers was still that weak as when he was young. Even if Imperial Tutor had told her how powerful Li Moying was, but without witnessing it firsthand, she felt that he had exaggerated too much. You can also listen on. Coupled with the fact that Li Shuer had met many powerful and capable geniuses, so she thought her expectations were already very high, so naturally she felt whatever other people said were not the truth. If Li Shuer were to find out that the useless second brother that she spoke about could send 10 young Master Yuans flying with just one slap, Huang Yueli wondered what kind of expression would she display. Huang Yueli laughed icily. When I meet your second brother, I will convey what you said to him. Now, you can scram. By Ruoli. Didn't you hear what I said earlier? Li Shuer had not expected that even after using young Master Yuan's name, Huang Yueli still treated her with disdain. Young Master Yuan's might was well known throughout Celestial Light Academy, so how could Huang Yueli not be afraid of him? However, Huang Yueli had already lost her patience, and with a flick of her right hand, a stream of profound energy struck. Li Shui's cultivation was very far apart from hers, and as she didn't have any way to resist, she was sent flying with just one move, crashing heavily onto a tall tree's branch. She vomited out a mouthful of blood as she stared daggers at Huang Yueli, wanting to let loose a torrent of abuse, but as she had sustained a serious injury, the blood around her chest area was raging, which rendered her unspeakable, so she could only use her gaze to express her hatred. Huang Yueli casted her one look and started walking away. Li Shui was so infuriated that she immediately vomited another mouthful of blood. That gaze which Huang Yueli gave before she left was just too insulting. She totally couldn't be bothered about her. Li Shui gritted her teeth and abused her silently. Just continue to be gleeful. You won't be so for too long. I will definitely teach you a lesson. That evening, just as the sun had just set, Li Moying appeared in Huang Yueli's room. He had set his intentions to not only freeload on sleeping, he would also freeload on eating. No one was clearer than him on how good his little fox's culinary skills were. So the minute the whiff of food came spreading from next door, Li Moying immediately showed himself. Huang Yueli was tired out for the entire day and had been hungry for the whole day. She had finally roasted a chicken and intended to hide somewhere to have a feast. But whoever knew that little Phoenix first stole one drumstick, followed by Li Moying suddenly appearing to steal the other one away. Her face turned black and protected the remaining 2 chicken wings with all her might. Why don't the two of you just die off somewhere else? You don't cook, don't work, and still want to steal my food? No way. The two of them immediately defended themselves. Li Moying tried to laugh it off. Little thing, don't be so stingy. Who says I'm not working? I can help you to wash the plates. Little Phoenix looked at its plump little claws, which could not even grab hold of the plate properly and could only say, I can act cute and also help you to stand guard. Huang Yueli's head was filled with black lines. Happy smiley, act cute and stand guard. Do you think you're a dog? Moreover, you can't even stand guard properly, letting ill-intentioned people enter every single time. The ill-intentioned person bore an innocent expression. Don't talk rubbish. I feel that Wang Cai is rather intelligent. He knows when to let the owner into the house. Owner. Keep wishing. Go and wash the plates now. Huang Yueli threw an oily plate towards Li Moying's head but was caught by him with all smiles. After finishing up the roasted chicken, Li Moying really went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Huang Yueli couldn't totally believed that this valued young sect master would do so, and thought he probably had never washed any dishes before, right? You can also listen on. He was really willing to do so. And did he even know how to? Surely he wouldn't break all the porcelain dishes that she had carefully refined, right? Huang Yueli worriedly followed into the kitchen, but what she saw made her surprised. A well-built man folded up his sleeves, revealing a firm and strong arm. His delicately beautiful fingers were holding on to the white porcelain dishes, washing them diligently, and very soon, it appeared as good as new. You actually know how to wash dishes? Huang Yueli exclaimed in shock. Why not? When I was young, the Empress made my use icy cold water to wash the dishes every day, and if I broke one, I would not have any food to eat for the entire day. Li Moying said casually. Huang Yueli turned speechless immediately and at the same time, started to feel heartache for him. He was a prince but was bullied to this extent. Li Moying was really pitiful when he was young. She bit her lips not knowing how to answer, but Li Moying indifferently laughed. How is it? Have I washed it cleanly? Will you still doubt that I don't know how to work? In future I will help you wash the dishes daily and you will allow me to come over to freeload on food. How about that? Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him. Fat hope. Today my mood is rather good, so I cooked. Do you think I'm a chef? I'm here to cultivate. She changed the topic immediately. Oh right, when I was in the academy today, I met Li Shui again. She told Li Moying what happened this afternoon. Huang Yueli had intended to treat it as a joke, but who knew that after Li Moying heard that, his expression sunk. Her guts have gotten rather big. Did you think she just because she's my sister, I won't do anything to her? And what the hell is this honorary association? Dare to give you trouble, do you want me to go give them a warning? Huang Yueli shook her head and smiled, that's just a few clowns, what can they do to me? If they really dared to make trouble for me, I'll turn them all into pig heads. Seeing this little thing full of confidence, Li Moying didn't say anything much but had silently recorded this matter down in his heart. From then onwards, Huang Yueli would go find a place to cultivate during daytime and come back in the evening to cook. Li Moying appeared and disappeared unpredictably and didn't really show up every night. Huang Yueli knew that with this man's status and ability, he would have a lot of things to handle and didn't mind it that much. But once Li Moying appeared, he would obediently wash the dishes after dinner and both of them would cultivate together, followed by sleeping together on the same bed. They lived in harmony and Li Moying slept deeply when he laid beside her as the nightmare situation did not appear anymore and this made Huang Yueli gradually rest assured. However, Huang Yueli quickly discovered that she had new troubles. Ever since the day she rejected attending the honorary association banquet, she met with various problems in the academy. For example, every time she went to rent a closed-door cultivation room, the reply was always, "All the rooms are fully booked. Miss Bai, please come back tomorrow." However, the closed-door cultivation rooms area always fully booked whenever she went back on the next day. Huang Yueli immediately realized that someone was setting themselves against her on purpose. The room she wanted to rent was the best closed-door cultivation room at the peak of the mountain and cost 20-star currency per day. There were not many who could afford to rent this kind of room and usually 80% of the rooms were empty, so how could it be full now? Not only that, whenever she went to exchange for medicinal herbs or ingredients, she would also meet with various obstructions. You can also listen on. As she was the top 10 core students in the martial arts stage, the managing teacher could not downplay her face. Instead they would find all sorts of excuses to delay and not help her do the exchange. With such things happening more often, this made Huang Yueli gradually bore a tummy full of anger. It was until the third day morning when Huang Yueli was about to leave her courtyard when she heard a low moaning groan in pain from the corner. Huang Yueli turned around and her brows immediately creased together. Lying beside the courtyard was Su Qingyu. Her face was willed with blood and pale white as paper, inclining sideways on the road. "Sister Su, what happened to you?" Huang Yueli quickly walked over and tried to hold her up but even though she used her might to pull her, she wasn't able to lift her up. After carefully examining, she realized that not only was Su Qingyu beaten up, her meridians were also sealed and she was totally immobile and bundled up like a dumpling, thrown in front of her door. What on earth happened? Huang Yueli released the rope and took out a bottle of treatment pills, feeding her a few at a time. Now that the Sky Phoenix Rings pills were all 4th grade and above, once the pills was taken, the effect was almost immediate and Su Qingyu felt that her internal injuries had recovered by 50%. This medication, her eyes revealed a sense of shock. Huang Yueli replied, "Don't bother about these medication. What on earth happened to you? Why were you beaten up like this?" Su Qingyu looked at her but hesitated, not knowing whether to speak or not. Actually I'm not too sure what happened as well. Today I was on my way to class but someone gunny sacked me from behind and gave me a beating. It's aimed at me?" Huang Yueli asked and upon seeing Su Qingyu's delay, she asked again, "They are members from the honorary association?" Su Qingyu saw that she had guessed correctly and nodded, replying, "Should be. I heard what they said, they're simply atrocious." No matter how calm Huang Yueli was usually, this time round she was really pissed off. These so-called honorary members acted like playing house-like kids so she had not bothered to get even with these *TTY kids so that she doesn't lower her own identity. But that didn't mean that she was afraid of them, who had expected these people to be unsatisfied with small gains. Not only did they created trouble for her, they even bullied her friend. Huang Yueli stood up bearing a cold expression. "Sister Su, your condition is not good so go back and rest up. I have a few more bottles of medication which can treat both internal and external injuries. As long as you eat it on time, within 2 days, your injuries would heal completely." She threw a few porcelain bottles to Su Qingyu and turned around to leave. Su Qingyu hurried called out, "Sister Li, don't go. Where are you going?" Huang Yueli's footsteps halted as an icy cold voice was heard, I suddenly remembered that so-called opening celebratory banquet seemed to be today. Since the Honorary Association wanted me to attend the banquet so badly and had come out with so many ways to invite me, then if I don't attend it, won't that be too rude? Su Qingyu was so scared that she sweated profusely. Sister Li, don't be rash. I know your capability is very strong, but the president of the Honorary Association is young Master Yuan. His might is unpredictable and rumored to be Celestial Light Academy's #1 genius in the past 30 years. Moreover, not only do they have might, they also have power. Just bear with this, otherwise if the matter spreads, then there's no way to conclude this. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli frowned slightly. According to what you mean, you should be beaten up for nothing? Su Qingyu thought that she had been convinced and hurriedly added on, this little bit of injury is nothing. Who doesn't get hurt in their pathway of cultivation? Moreover, this is not the first time I've been bullied. For practitioners who come from small countries like us, being bullied is a common thing. We must consider our own future, and tolerating this small thing is the best way to go. Huang Yueli glanced sideways at her. Sister Su, do you know why you have never been able to advance ever since you entered Celestial Light Academy? Because I don't get enough resources. Wrong. It's because you've been beaten until you've lost the drive that a practitioner should have. Huang Yueli turned her head and with a piercing stare, she spoke word for word, in the art of cultivation, you should charge forward. You can only advance and not retreat, and more still, you should not tolerate. No need to persuade me further, I'll be back soon. Hearing what Huang Yueli said, Su Qingyu's chest seemed to be pounded by a huge hammer. No wonder she could not catch up to Huang Yueli. It's not just about innate talent, but just based on her imposing manner, she was far inferior than her. By the time she regained her senses, Huang Yueli had already vanished. Su Qingyu clenched her hand into a fist with shades of worry. Sister Li, you must come back safely. Huang Yueli quickly left Celestial Light Academy and arrived at the destination where the banquet was held, Sky Cloud City's largest family, Yuan family's residence. These few days, news regarding the Honorary Association holding the banquet had been circulating around the academy. Except for Huang Yueli, the rest of those who had received an invitation to the banquet were discussing enthusiastically about it. To be deemed as the highest honor, some even said that if they were able to attend just one banquet held by the Honorary Association, then they would have no more regrets in coming to Celestial Light Academy. So even if Huang Yueli hadn't looked at the invitation, she could still easily find the location of the banquet. Yuan residents took up a large piece of land and had occupied the entire Sky Cloud City's southwest region. Just from the exterior, it looked luxurious and stylish. Today, the Yuan residence was filled with visitors. Each of the lavish carriages which had stopped at the entrance hung the symbol of a large family in Sky Cloud City. Each of the visitors' identity looked extraordinary. Huang Yueli walked to the entrance but was held back by the guards. Miss, you are. Those visitors who were attending the banquet were splendidly dressed, especially the young ladies. In an attempt to catch the attention of those powerful and well-esteemed young masters, they were all gorgeously dressed up, worried that they would be outshone by others. In comparison, Huang Yueli was casually dressed and looked especially out of place. Huang Yueli spoke in an icy voice, I'm here to attend the banquet, isn't this Celestial Light Academy's Honorary Association's banquet? The guards exchanged glances as they spoke. Miss, please show us your invitation card. Huang Yueli replied, I didn't bring the invitation card. When Li Zi passed her that invitation, she didn't bother to receive it at all and just left it in the classroom. The guards expressed a look of disdain as they spoke, then we're so sorry, we cannot let you in. Miss, please go back. In fact, they had long noticed that Huang Yueli didn't arrive in any luxurious carriage and had long guessed that she wasn't the daughter of any large families. At this moment, seeing that she could not produce the invitation card, they more or less confirmed their guess was right. This was a woman who wanted to sneak into the banquet hall to hook up with some rich guys. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli's gaze turned cold. I'm Bai Ruoli, Celestial Light Academy first-year student. The Honorary Association had sent me an invite a few days ago, so you can check the guest list to verify. However, The guards had long determined that she was a woman with ill intentions, and without any intention to check the guest list, they jeered at her, laughing loudly. "Do you think we're silly? To tell you the truth, there are 10 over of those ladies who tried to smuggled in saying they have an invitation card. This pack of lies are no longer fresh anymore. I say, this lady, you're not bad looking, and moreover you're a student of Celestial Light Academy, so why can't you cultivate properly? Must you join in the rat race and play up to people of power and influence? You don't look like any of the ladies of those large families in Sky Cloud City, so even if you enter the banquet premise, no one would bother to take a look at you. Just leave now. That's right. Don't block the way. There are many other guests who are waiting to enter." Huang Yueli looked at them coldly. "What if I insist on entering?" "Ha ha ha ha." The guards all roared with laughter. The one leading the team unrestrainedly ridiculed her. "What kind of place do you think the Yuan residence is? You think you can enter just because you want to? Just ordinary guards like us are already 4th stage realm practitioners, whereas you're just 3rd stage realm? Do you think your young Master Yuan, able to defeat 4th stage realm?" But before he could complete his sentence, he felt a pain on his chest. Following that, his body uncontrollably flew outward. Before he could even react to what had happened, he heard the surroundings shouting out in shock, "Captain, you!" A loud clatter boomed, and the captain of the guards had crashed onto Yuan Residence's main door. The signboard hanging above the main door violently shook for a moment. The captain held on to his chest, unbelievably looking at the young lady in front of him. Until now, he couldn't understand how on earth was he sent flying away. He was a genuine 4th stage realm 5th level practitioner, and moreover his backing was the influential Yuan residence, so the cultivation method and profound skills which he cultivated with are not ordinary skills. His actual ability had already exceeded normal same-leveled practitioners. The young lady in front of him looked soft and delicate, and her age was still so young, but could send him flying? Before the captain's shock had ended, following that the signboard on the Yuan residence's main door shook once again, and in the end, it slanted at a crooked angle. Those surrounding people all drew a cold breath when they saw this scenario. Heavens! There's actually someone so daring to actually beat up Yuan residence's guards at the main door? Had she eaten leopard's guts or bear's heart? Not only did she beat them up, she even made the signboard at Yuan residence's main door crooked. This is a pure slap on the face. Who is this little lass? Her guts are really too much. Not only does she have great guts, her potential is really not ordinary as well. What backing does she have? The surrounding crowd were astounded, whereas the guards were even more terrified. The Yuan residents had employed them to guard the place, and in the end, even the signboard had turned crooked. If this matter was pursued, they would get into big trouble. The only way now was to take down this little lass who dared to create trouble for them. Only this could redeem their sins. However, although they all thought this way, the few guards did not dare to do it. Looking at this slender young lady, with one move, she had easily defeated the most abled captain in their team. Seeing this, no matter how silly they were before, they came to understand that the young lady in front of them was an unfathomable expert. You can also listen on. Earlier they had eyes but couldn't see and had thought her to be some gold digger. It was no wonder that she taught them a heavy lesson. The few of them were crying out in silence while wondering what was the background of this young lady. What kind of large family would nurture such a genius? The worst of all was that she had dressed so casually and even came attending the banquet on foot, so wasn't she intending to fool them on purpose? This round, how should they react? The captain clutched his chest while lying on the ground as he looked at his subordinates who were too cowardly to advance, as a fit of anger arose as he furiously retorted, "Why are you still standing there for? Quickly take her down. Our Yuan residence's signboard had been smashed crooked, so we cannot let matters rest like that." The few of them received his order and forced themselves to move forward. Huang Yueli sniggered chillingly, "What? You still dare to obstruct my way?" To tell the truth, just recalling how this young lady had sent their captain flying in just one move, and that glaring and attention-catching fire attributed profound energy, it made them all shudder. Captain saw their hesitation and grew angrier. "Why are you all in a daze? All of you go together. She's alone while all of your cultivations are much higher than hers. If you strike together, Don't tell me you're afraid you cannot handle her at all." The few of them then realized, and after exchanging glances, they struck out all at the same time towards Huang Yueli. All the guards from large families like Yuan residents had been through special training, and there was a tacit understanding among them, so when the few of them struck together, their potential exceeded much higher than a single person's potential. The few guards lined up into a formation and exhibited their profound skills together as an intense energy instantly exploded in the sky. Quick! Hide! Danger! They're really worthy of being Yuan family's guards. How is that third-stage realm lass going to go against such a strong combi attack? That's it, I can't bear to look. The bystanders cried out waves of terror. Even those who were standing far away were stunned by this kind of bravura, and those whose cultivation were slightly worse off started to back off. Huang Yueli, however, remained indifferent as the corners of her lips curled upwards. Strong, profound energy whirled in front of her, and just one move and the guards felt giddy for a second and had lost sight of her whereabouts. But following that was a huge wave of energy coming from their backs, and all of them stumbled and fell. It was because Huang Yueli had used her footwork and easily evaded their attacks while she detoured to their backs. The guards felt that their combined attacks would definitely hit her and had never considered the fact that she had moved to their backs, so they did not put up any defense at all. Huang Yueli did not stand on ceremony as she sent out flying kicks onto their butts. Bam! 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 After 6 resounding bams were heard, the 6 guards without any exception laid flat on their noses neatly in one line. Moreover, on each of their butts was clearly a shoe print. At that instant, it became extremely silent at the main door of the Yuan residence as everyone looked at Huang Yueli in awe, not believing their own eyes. How was that possible? How on earth did they do it? Each of those 6 guards were all in 4th stage realm cultivation, and moreover their combined attack was much stronger than before. But yet they were beaten until they were covered in blue-black and unable to stand on their feet. In the entire Sky Cloud City, there were not many geniuses to be able to reach such a stage. Huang Yueli raised her chin as she spoke with an indifferent smile. Yuan residence is really the #1 family clan. The way they welcome their guests are really too authentic. To think that they're so courteous until they kneel onto the ground to welcome guests, I'm really impressed. You can also listen on. The few guards were both furious and embarrassed. As the saying went, those officials at the Prime Minister's door were all 7th grade ministers. As Yuan residence guards, even those reputable people in Sky Cloud City were not willing to offend them and mostly treated them with respect. Some of the practitioners whose cultivation levels were much higher than theirs even fought to get into their good books. Since when had they ever been embarrassed before? And to think that they were kicked in their butts. Moreover, there were so many people crowding around the Yuan residence's main door, taunting them. Although their injuries were not considered as serious, but they all vomited out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Mainly it was out of being enraged. However, no matter how enraged they were, no one dared to catch on Huang Yueli's words, and even those housekeeper who had initially joined in to support them all stared a few more glances before they turned around and ran into the Yuan residence. Huang Yueli caught a glimpse of this from the corner of her eye, knowing that the housekeeper had ran in to divulge this information. But she wasn't too worried about it as she coldly sneered and walked into the inner zone of the Yuan residence. In the banquet hall. The banquet was almost starting as most of the guests had already arrived. To get invited by the Honorary Association was an enormous honor for many, so they didn't dare to be late as everyone arrived rather early in the day. Yuan Zhayu sat at the main seat, listening to many flattering and fawning voices as his mood turned incredibly great. The others had thought that he was defeated by the new senior brother Li and would be in a bad mood, or even become so gloomy, but the truth happened to be the exact opposite. As the successor of the largest family in Sky Cloud City, he had gotten hold of a top secret, and that was Celestial Light Academy's most exceptional genius. The future sect master had personally visited Celestial Light Academy, and moreover, he was the newly arrived senior brother Li. What kind of status did the young sect master have, and what ability did he hold? To be defeated by him, Yuan Zhayu not only did not feel embarrassed, on the contrary, he was jumping for joy for several days. It was difficult for him to have ever been able to meet someone like young sect master in his entire life, but now he became a member of the academy. He even had the opportunity to exchange blows with young sect master. If he was able to display his strength and attracted young sect master's attention, or even to hug his thigh, that would be a miraculous piece of luck which one couldn't even begged for. The only pity was before he could even display his ace finishing blow and not even being able to take one strike from young sect master, he wondered if young sect master would despise him because of this. But to be able to be defeated by young sect master was a kind of glory. Probably plenty of other people would envy him. Li Shuera was just standing by his side as her delicate hand personally held onto the wine bottle as she poured out wine for Yuan Zheyu before offering the wine cups with both hands to his mouth. Young Master Yuan, Shuer proposes a toast to you. This is Shuer's first time attending such a big occasion. Yuan Zheyu smiled pleasantly as he accepted the toast and took the opportunity to caress Li Shuer's small hand. Shuer is really considerate. Li Shuer's face was filled with bashfulness as she withdrew her hand. Yuan Zheyu could tell that it was her scheme to loosen the reins only to grasp them better, but towards this new female chaperone, he was rather satisfied. Although her background was slightly off and her ability was just ordinary, but she was a genius in armament refining. Originally, when Li Shuera was only a high-class armament apprentice, Yuan Zheyu couldn't even be bothered about her, but this time Master Tang had already let the news out that this disciple of his had already reached the standards of a first-ranked armament master. She only needed to wait for the next armament guild's approval to start and she would be able to become a real armament master. Among thousands of armament apprentices, only one could ultimately become an armament master. You can also listen on. Moreover, Li Shuera was still young and would have great prospects for the future. In this case, she had barely made it into Yuan Zheyu's eyes. But to fight for the position of Yuan Zheyu's lawful wife, Li Shuera had little hope. At this moment, a middle-aged man hurriedly ran in from the entrance. Eldest young master, bad news, bad news. Yuan Zheyu frowned as he felt unhappy. Now that the atmosphere was so good, he came shouting bad news, so wasn't this just a huge disappointment? What's the matter? The housekeeper took quick steps and stood beside him as he lowered his tone. Eldest young master, there's someone at the main entrance causing trouble. Some young lady claiming that she's a Celestial Light Academy student says you had invited her for the banquet but yet was unable to show the invitation card. And those guards at the main door were blind enough to not notice her valued status and had offended her. This lady actually directly beat the guards up until they had sustained serious injury. What? How is that possible? Hearing that, Yuan Zheyu bore a fair of disbelief. He was clearest on the ability of his guards. If they were to combine their attacks and strike at the same time, even he had to spend an amount of effort to defeat them. Was there even a second person who was able to do this? The housekeeper hurried added on, eldest young master, I don't dare to cheat you. This matter is absolutely true and many others have seen it. Even our Yuan residence's signboard had slanted crooked from her blow. Yuan Zheyu instantly became enraged. Ridiculous. Even if our Yuan residence's guards are in the wrong, but to even take it out on the signboard, this means that she's not even giving us face. Isn't that so? But for such a well-abled lady, her status must be extraordinary. We don't know how to handle this, so would eldest young master please tell us what to do? Yuan Zheyu calmed down slightly. On thinking, not knowing what background this kind of genius had, and if they were to offend her without making any head or tail, then they would be on the losing end. He then questioned, what is this person called? What's her identity? Have all of you asked her? Housekeeper hurried replied, she only said she was Celestial Light Academy's student and her name was Bai something. Surname Bai? Yuan Zheyu went into a momentarily blank as he couldn't recall any large influential powerhouses with the surname Bai. Just at this moment, a loud bam was heard from the banquet entrant. Everyone in the banquet hall was shocked as they turned their heads to take a look. They could only see the rosewood door at the entrance was kicked open and a slender figure stood in the light, unable to make clear of her looks as they could only see the sun rays from her side that this was a slender young lady. Just as the crowd went into a blank, the housekeeper was already pointing to her as he shrieked, eldest young master, it's her, it's her. The one who was beating up the guards at the main entrance is her. Yuan Zheyu hurriedly turned over to take a look as he went into a short blank. Huang Yueli slowly walked into the banquet hall and when she got closer, The crowd began to see her looks clearly. The young lady in front of their eyes was wearing a white-lined jacket which had pink embroidery flower patterns at the bottom and a red flowing dress without any accessories, with only a flower-shaped pearl fixed on the back of her head to pin up her hair. As compared to those young ladies who were dressed up to the 90s, her dressing just simple, too pure and too plain. But even so, when her slender waist swayed, she seemed like an elegant, respectable fairy who had fallen onto earth as she attracted everyone's gazes. That kind of fresh and pure beauty didn't require any extra polishing, and just merely standing there would make anyone unable to forego her existence. You can also listen on. Those present were all stunned. It was after a while before a sharp piercing voice broke the silence. "It's you dash. By Ruoli, how dare you even appear here?" Lu Zi pounded on the table as she stood up with a cold intent. "What? Now you know what it means to be scared. Know that the honorary association cannot be offended. Let me tell you, it's too late. We don't welcome you here, so get the hell out. Men, chase her out." The housekeeper hesitantly looked at Lu Zi and looked back at Yuan Ziyu, eldest young master. He had called out for him several times before Yuan Ziyu regained his senses from being mesmerized. The minute he saw Huang Yueli, he felt that his heart had skipped a beat. The young lady in front of him was simply too beautiful. This kind of beauty was not just on the exterior, there was also an invisible form of temperament which made her stood out from the others. She was simply one of the most beautiful young lady which Yuan Ziyu had ever met in his entire life. He was also mesmerized by her for quite a while. It was only after the housekeeper's reminders when he turned around and questioned, "What's going on? This lady, what's your name? Why have you barged directly into Yuan residence?" Before Huang Yueli could answer, Lu Zi had already butted in. "Brother Yuan, this wretched lass is the one who I told you about several days ago, this year's new top student, and the one who became the top 10 students in the martial arts stage, by Ruoli. She really put on very huge airs. Brother Yuan, you'd personally instructed me to send her an invitation giving her so much face. But in the end, she actually threw the invitation away, and what's more, she even hit me." Yuan Ziyu found out her name and muttered to himself irresolutely, "So she is by Ruoli. This name is really not bad at all." His voice was so soft that even Lu Zi couldn't hear as she continued to voice out in anger. "This is simply too much. The honorary association had never been humiliated by anyone before, to actually disregard the invitation that we had sent out. Now she's regretting it and actually had the face to come and join in the banquet, thinking that things can be evened out like that. Brother Yuan, you gotta show her who's boss here." When Huang Yueli heard that, she gave an icy sneer. "Lu Zi, your ability is just so-so, but you really know how to act mighty. Want to show me who's boss? Just based on you? To tell you the truth, the reason for me coming here today is not to join in some banquet. I'm here to settle the debt with you." "Settle a debt with me?" Lu Zi still had not figured out the situation as she exaggeratedly opened her eyes wide and laughed out loud. "This is the biggest joke I've heard since the beginning of this year. Who do you think you are? Just a new student. So what even if you've entered the martial arts top 10? There are so many Celestial Light Academy talents who have been there, and whoever had offended the honorary association all had no good ending, so you are no exception." "Really?" Huang Yueli shot her an icy glance. Lu Zi felt a chilly shudder from her icy cold glance and couldn't help but recall the last time when she was taught a lesson by Huang Yueli, to be slapped by her own hands. Until now, she could still feel the fiery hot pain on her face. Momentarily, she suddenly felt afraid. But reversing her thoughts, she was now standing on Yuan residence grounds, the turf for the honorary association. No matter how gutsy Huang Yueli was, would she dare to create trouble here? Would she dare to behave atrociously? Unless water leaked into her brains or she had taken a leopard's guts, otherwise she wouldn't dare to take action here. You can also listen on. Thinking about this, Lu Zi suddenly felt confidence brewing. She laughed coldly as she provocatively raised her head. "That's right, just wait and see." Huang Yueli's lips suddenly curled upwards. "Unfortunately, I don't like to wait." "What do you mean?" Lu Zi was stunned. The next moment, Huang Yueli's figure was as fast as lightning as she disappeared from where she was standing. Lu Zi thought she suddenly had vague and unclear vision as she blinked her eyes, and when she opened it again, Huang Yueli had already appeared in front of her. Lu Zi turned pale with shock and hurriedly stretched out her hands to defend herself, but Huang Yueli's speed was very fast and her attack was extremely strong. Before she could even raise her hands, she was already sent flying out by Huang Yueli's punch right in the middle. Luckily her seat was right in front of a huge screen and she had directly broke a hole in the screen. But due to the buffer, she had not fallen too far away. Heavens! Have I seen wrongly? Bai Ruoli actually struck out. This cannot possibly be real. There's actually someone who had dared to beat Lu family's young miss up in the middle of an honorary association banquet. Is Bai Ruoli mad? How would she dare? The banquet hall was in a state of chaos as shrieks of terror was heard. No one had expected such a violent matter to have happened at such an important occasion. Besides that, everyone without exception were sweating on behalf of Huang Yueli. Who doesn't know what power the honorary association held? To have such slap on their face happening, how are they going to settle this matter? Everyone felt that the new top student was finished. Song Yaru was also seated among the crowd, and as she considered herself to have some relations with Huang Yueli, she was extremely anxious at this point of time until her sweat kept sprouting. How was she such a courageous person? To hit an honorary association person at their turf, and even though she is right in front of Mr. Yuan, she continued to slap their faces. Although Song Yaru already felt that she was usually very arrogant, but for a matter like this, she had not even dared to dream about it. Lu Zi was totally stunned by Huang Yueli as she used her hand to cover her face, staring unbelievably at Huang Yueli. Whereas in between her fingers, not only was her nose bleeding, her tears uncontrollably flowed as well, cutting a sorry figure. Actually Lu Zi had not wanted to cry, but the place which Huang Yueli had hit was just too sensitive and she broke her nose bridge with just one punch, so her tears were practically uncontrollable. Huang Yueli welcomed her vengeful gaze as she slowly walked closer and overlooked at her from the top. You. Lu Zi's glare was smoking, but she was unable to complete a whole sentence at all. Huang Yueli slowed said, "Haven't I told you earlier? I don't like to wait. So if there's a feud, I must exact it on the spot. In future, don't make me wait. Do you understand?" Lu Zi was so humiliated that she wished she could die, as she did not even dare to raise her head up. As an honorary association member, she was well respected everywhere she went in the academy, so since when had she ever been humiliated in such a way before? At this moment, she really wished that she could dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. However, things had not finished. Huang Yueli continued, "This punch is to teach you not to despise others. The next punch is to exact revenge for my senior sister, Su Qingyu," saying that she immediately struck out. But this punch didn't landed on her target. It was instead neutralized by a wave of gentle profound energy. "Miss Bai, this matter, please let it rest." Not knowing when, Yuan Zheyu had already moved himself in between the two of them. "You can also listen on." Huang Yueli had not expected Yuan Zheyu to appear like that and couldn't help but raised her brows. Lu Zi seemed to have seen her savor as she agitatedly pounced over, forgetting about the pain on her face. "Young Master Yuan. Save me, please save me. This wretched lass actually dared to beat people at your banquet. This simply meant that she didn't even respect you." Lu Zi shouted herself hoarse as she clenched her teeth and stared at Huang Yueli with an extremely fierce look. Earlier when Huang Yueli had struck out the second time, she was scared until she almost lost half of her life. She had thought today she would be embarrassed totally. Luckily, Yuan Zheyu saved her just in time. The minute she saw Yuan Zheyu, Lu Zi became rest assured as a chilly smile appeared on her lips. This wretched lass, it's the end of her complacency. After this, she would be paying back for her own actions. What kind of status did young Master Yuan had? Among the younger generation in Sky Cloud City, no one dared to offend him. Now that Huang Yueli dared to beat up his trusted aides at the banquet which he personally organized, young Master Yuan would definitely not swallow down this for nothing. Huang Yueli's gaze swept towards Yuan Zheyu. "You're that whatever young Master Yuan?" Fwah! A wave of shock was heard from below. The crowd all gasped with shock as they looked at Huang Yueli. She actually dared to use such a disrespectful tone towards young Master Yuan? Lu Zi couldn't help but laugh coldly. She's seen people rushing to die but never seen someone so desperate before. Young Master Yuan had personally appeared, and instead of hurriedly kneeling down to beg for mercy, she dared to use such a tone and talk to him. Did she feel that there was not enough time for her to die faster? Everyone were waiting to see young Master Yuan blow up in anger. But Yuan Ziyu's reaction was totally out of everyone's expectations. He stared at Huang Yueli for a while and his face broke out into a smile. That's right, I'm Yuan Ziyu. Miss, you're this year's new top student by Ruoli, right? Seeing for myself is 100 times better than hearing from others. We welcome you to join in today's banquet. When he said that, the entire banquet hall's crowd were petrified. What situation was this? Instead of getting infuriated, young Master Yuan spoke to her in such an amicable manner. How was that even possible? A majority of the crowd bore an expression which didn't understood why he acted in this way. Only Li Shuer, who followed young Master Yuan throughout the entire duration, had a change in expression as her fingers clutched tightly onto the handkerchief in her hands. Earlier when Huang Yueli walked in, the expression Yuan Ziyu had when he looked at her instantly attracted Li Shuer's alert, and upon seeing this scenario, the danger alert in her heart rang once again. It wouldn't be what she had thought, right? Huang Yueli went into a blank momentarily as she really didn't expect Yuan Ziyu's attitude to be that well. She had initially prepared to fight it out against Yuan Ziyu, but this would probably be put off for quite a while. Her tone was icy cold as she responded, "Young Master Yuan, I've heard of your big name, but unfortunately I'm not here to attend some banquet but just here to exact revenge. This Miss Lu had beat up my senior sister, so I'm just taking revenge on her behalf." Seeing that she didn't appreciate the kindness, Yuan Ziyu still didn't get angry. Instead he smiled as he said, "Miss Bai, you're too ceremonious. We're all fellow students, so we would never have any overnight enmity. Since you've already beaten her up, your revenge has also been exacted, so why not just sit down and enjoy this banquet? Let's all gather together and have a great night out. You can also listen on." Huang Yueli was slightly surprised as her brows rose. Since young Master Yuan is sincerely inviting me, then if I don't join in the banquet, it seems a little too unjustifiable. Yuan Ziyu complacently smiled. He knew that based on his own identity and charm, how was it possible that any young lass would treat him as transparent? Although this new top student was very arrogant and very overbearing, but she was after all a new student, so how could she not give him Yuan Ziyu any face? However, Huang Yueli immediately added on, "But that would have to wait till I complete my revenge. Would young Master Yuan kindly step aside and let me finish up my punches so that I can attend your banquet?" Yuan Ziyu had for an instant thought that he had heard things wrongly. But when he saw the icy cold glare in Huang Yueli's eyes, he realized that he didn't hear her wrongly. He had already given this young lass such a huge favor. Not only did he not take into account of her beating up someone at his banquet, and had even taken the initiative to invite her. However, Huang Yueli totally didn't intend to step down and had wanted to continue finishing her unfinished business, to continue beating up Lu Zi. Lu Zi was initially rather confident that since Yuan Ziyu was already here, Huang Yueli would kneel down and beg for mercy. Whoever knew that matters would take such an unexpected turn of events, and Yuan Ziyu actually didn't blame this wretched lass? Lu Zi was so angry that she almost went crazy but didn't dare to jump out and rebuke Yuan Ziyu. Just as her heart was toiling over this, Huang Yueli actually said such things. Lu Zi finally could not hold it in as she screeched, "Wretched lass, what do you want to do? I'm telling you, this is the Yuan residence. Do you think you can do as you wish in front of young Master Yuan?" Yuan Ziyu's smile also fell off. "Miss Bai, your unwillingness to forgive puts me in a difficult position. Since we're all schoolmates, what grudges are there which cannot be solved? Why don't we sit down and talk things out instead of beating her up? Moreover, although junior sister Lu's ability is not as good as yours, but she is after all the daughter of the Lu family. In her family, there is an 8th stage realm peerless expert who is holding the fort. I advise you to think through before you act." Lu Zi's face turned green and white, not believing that Yuan Ziyu actually said such things. Although this sounded like persuasion, but to say this under the circumstances after Lu Zi had been beaten up, this was a cry to show her weakness. Brother Yuan, why do you bother to tell this wretched lass such things? She dare to behave atrociously at our honorary association banquet, so that meant that she doesn't want to live anymore. I must beat her until she becomes a cripple. Shut your mouth. Yuan Ziyu turned around and howled at her sternly. Hearing Lu Zi speaking out at such an unsuitable timing, he was already filled with fury. Others didn't know how much ability Huang Yueli had, but Yuan Ziyu had heard from his housekeeper that this young lass, at such a tender age, had already defeated 7 fourth-stage realm guards' combined attacks and causing them to incur a serious injury. Yuan Ziyu admitted that when he was at Huang Yueli's age, he might not even be able to do that. This proved that this young lass's innate talent and power of comprehension was no lesser than his. When Huang Yueli's arrived at the banquet hall, he was surprised once again when they met. He was in awe because of her unique temperament and looks. Just one look and he was mesmerized. By the time Yuan Ziyu had regained his senses, his heart had already secretly set a determination. Only Huang Yueli with such ability and looks was worthy of him. As compared to her, whatever Li Shuer or ladies from the other large families all became passing clouds. You can also listen on. Due to the admiration that he had towards Huang Yueli, Yuan Ziyu had no intention to hold her accountable for beating up someone. Not only did he not hold her accountable, he even invited her to stay for the banquet so that she could witness for herself what kind of status did he had among those influential younger generation and talents in Skycloud City before displaying his own cultivational talent. After letting this young lass found out how powerful he was and displaying his feelings for her, probably, this genius young lady from the neighboring small country around the border would be touched by him. Yuan Ziyu's plan was laid out nicely, however. He had never expected Huang Yueli to not following according to standard procedures. He had already said to let this matter rest, but not only did Huang Yueli not intended to let matters rest, she even continuously struck out. This was simply treating his kind intentions as a donkey's lungs and liver. Yuan Ziyu was just feeling infuriated when he heard Lu Zi's wails and howls while dragging his feet, and he felt impatient as he howled at her. Lu Zi, you'd caused this matter yourself. You still have the cheek to say, Lu Zi stared at him in disbelief as her tears rolled down once again. She was born with a golden spoon in her mouth, and Yuan Ziyu usually treated her with respect and had never howled at her even once. Now it was all because of this wretched lass. Lu Zi's glare towards Huang Yueli was filled with vengeance. It's all because of a wretched lass like you. Just wait and see, I will never let you off. Before she could finish her sentence, her voice suddenly stopped. With a pa sound, a crisp resounding slap landed on her face. Lu Zi vomited out a mouthful of blood as 2 teeth also spurted out from her mouth. Huang Yueli stood in front of her as she said coldly, I told you before, I don't like to wait. And yet you still let me wait. Looks like I had indeed talked too much earlier. Saying that, she raised her right hand and with a continuous pa slapping sound, giving Lu Zi 10 over slaps on her face. Not long after, Li Zi's face became so swollen that even her eyes could not open wide, completely became a pig head. She finally could not stand the humiliation and her eyes rolled back as she fainted. Huang Yueli then withdrew her hand and shaking her right hand, she grudgingly said, her face is really thick, making my hand painful. The entire banquet hall was filled with dead silence. No one had expected that even after Yuan Ziyu had personally came to stop the fight, and even given her face to persuade her, she actually struck Lu Zi once again, and this time, it was even more vicious than before. She really was, really gutsy. This was simply throwing the honorary association's face onto the ground and stomping on it. No matter how much tolerance young Master Yuan had, he probably wouldn't forgive her. In actual fact, Yuan Ziyu himself was stunned. When Huang Yueli struck out earlier, he had already detected it and immediately wanted to do the same as earlier, to use his profound energy to neutralize the attack. But whoever had expected that the speed of Huang Yueli's attack was too fast and her skills were too swift. In a split second, she had dodged and bypassed him, appearing right in front of Lu Zi. Not only that, at the same time when she struck, she also threw out a fire wall, blocking right in front of Yuan Ziyu. This fire wall's might was astonishingly strong. It was congealed using deviant flame and shouldn't be underestimated. Yuan Zheyu had also spent 2 breaths' time to break through it before he could rush over to stop her. By then, it was all too late. Huang Yueli had already struck Lu Zi at lightning speed with 10 over slaps, causing Lu Zi to faint. You can also listen on. In that instance, Yuan Zheyu also didn't know how he should react. He himself had not expected that he really could not stop Huang Yueli. After Huang Yueli had finished abusing Lu Zi, seeing that she had fainted, she felt appeased as she directly threw her aside and stood right up, patted her sleeves as she prepared to leave. Everyone's gazes were stuck on her, looking at her suave exit towards the door. Ever since she barged into the banquet hall to the time she started beating up that someone the minute they couldn't talk things through, to when Yuan Ziyu's appearance failed to obstruct her, and finally until her abuse on Lu Zi amounted up to only a quarter of an hour. This arrogance, egotistical, unexcelled presence was however as free as it could be, and so suave that no one could compared with. The admiration and envy in everyone's eyes started flowing out. With such ability and imposing manner, who couldn't help but envy? Wait a minute. Yuan Zheyu called out loudly from behind. Everyone's ears perked up. Because everyone had been waiting for Yuan Zhiyu's reaction, not believing that he would really let Huang Yueli to create trouble at his banquet and leave without paying any consequence. In that case, the #1 genius's face from Sky Cloud City would totally be lost. Now, he had finally opened his mouth, so how would he deal with Huang Yueli? Quite a number of people were secretly discussing and guessing Huang Yueli's ending. Everyone concurred that although Huang Yueli looked very glamorous, but later after the Yuan residence's top experts have taken her down, she would cry on her knees begging for mercy. It was just a moment of showing off her bravado only. Huang Yueli's footsteps came to a halt as she turned back and her cold gaze swept towards Yuan Zheyu. Young Master Yuan, is there anything I can do for you? Yuan Zheyu suddenly went speechless, not knowing what to say. No one knew that he was fighting in agitation without stop in his heart. For the sake of Yuan family and the Honorary Association's face, he should make a move personally to take down this young lass who dared to create trouble at the banquet. Moreover, he had to use a more vicious way to deal with how she dealt with Lu Zi earlier, so that everyone knew that young Master Yuan's pride would not be violated. But in this way, Huang Yueli would definitely become enemies with her and his intention to woo this young lass would go down into the drains. Moreover, Huang Yueli was able to bypass his obstruction and successfully beat Lu Zi until she fainted, already proved that her ability was much higher than he initially expected. Such a talented genius like her with such gorgeous looks, if he missed this chance, he would probably not be able to find a second one. Even if there was, it was also those cream of the crop in the large sects which he cannot hope to win. Yuan Zheyu's thoughts flew past quickly as he spoke out with a steely green face after a little while. Miss Bai, earlier, hadn't you agreed that you would stay and attend the banquet? When he said that, the crowd present was not just stunned, their jaws simply dropped onto the ground. These words really came out from young Master Yuan's mouth. The way the Honorary Association usually did things was usually arrogant and overbearing, and if there was an enmity, they would definitely exact revenge for it. Why was it that they had already been slapped on the face to this extent, but instead of exacting revenge, young Master Yuan had actually invited her to attend the banquet? Looking at Yuan Ziyu's anxious expression, Huang Yueli couldn't help but laugh. Young Master Yuan, am I hearing things wrong? I have beaten up a member of your association and instead of pursuing matters, you are asking me to stay and attend the banquet. To tell you the truth, I really don't dare to stay because I'm afraid you might put poison in my drink to poison me to death. You can also listen on. Her smile resembled the blossoming of a cherry blossom, as tender and beautiful as it could be. Yuan Zheyu went into a daze just from her smile. If it was said that his concession earlier had made him felt unreconciled, then now he had completely thrown the face of the Honorary Association behind. Hearing that Huang Yueli still had the intention to leave, he hurriedly added, Miss Bai, where do you want to go? How could I possibly put poison into your wine? Today's matter was originally caused by Lu Zi. She had really gone too far. Usually she also liked to use the honorary association's name to bully those new students and neighboring small country students, and I'd long wanted to find a chance to warn her about it. Huang Yueli raised her brows in surprise. In this case, young Master Yuan, you also feel that? The beating I gave her was well deserved. Miss Bai does things in a clean and clear way, and since there's logic and evidence, why should it be well deserved? Huang Yueli gazed at him indifferently. I'd not expected that young Master Yuan is rather reasonable. Other people outside often say your eyes are on your head and you're rash and overbearing, and always despise those practitioners from small countries. Looks like these are all rumors. Those are naturally rumors. No matter which country the practitioner comes from, as long as they have enough ability, I will always treat them as my top guess. Yuan Zheyu stole a glance at her and added, for example, someone like Miss Bai, who had both ability and beautiful looks above the rest, I will absolutely treat you well. These words were rather ambiguous and was considered to express his liking for her in an implicit way. Hearing these words, all of the guests present seemed to understand what was going on. So, young Master Yuan had taken a fancy to this Bai Ruoli. No wonder even after creating such a huge trouble, young Master Yuan actually didn't pursue further. That's right. I said earlier, the way young Master Yuan looked at her just doesn't seem right. So it's not an illusion. Humph, she's just a country lass from a small country, her status is just too lowly. What could young Master Yuan even possibly see in her? So what if her status is low? Her innate talent and potential are there for all to see. Lu Ziyi is at least a top 50+ expert in the martial arts stage and yet was crushed in her hands, treated like a sandbag to be beaten, and even young Master Yuan was not able to stop her. Large families tend to value the future mistress's innate talent. Just based on this, that Bai Ruoli has better hopes of marrying into the Yuan family. But what about Li Shuer? Young Master Yuan had already invited her to take part in such an important banquet. Don't tell me he has no intention of marrying her as a wife. This is hard to say. One is a genius practitioner whereas the other is a valued armament master. If it was me, I'd also find it hard to choose. But Bai Ruoli is an exceptional peerless beauty. Earlier when she walked in, everyone's attention was on her. Just looking at young Master Yuan's gaze and we already know which one he likes better. At this point of time, whatever could be said was said. The other unconcerned parties had already found out that something fishy was going on. But in Li Shuer's heart, she was even clearer than the rest. Ever since Huang Yueli walked into this banquet hall, it was obvious that Yuan Ziyu's attention was totally attracted by her, to the point that he had forgotten that Li Shuer was still by his side. Li Shuer had tried to gain back his attention on several attempts, but Yuan Zheyu didn't even bother to look her in the eye, only bothering to interact with Huang Yueli. At that moment, she felt terrible, but when she heard what Yuan Zheyu said, and what the crowd were speculating, her expression instantly turned green and white. Nothing was more unbearable than this. You can also listen on. Although Li Shuer was just standing beside Yuan Zheyu, but the way others looked at her seemed to have determined that she was an abandoned woman. She stared fiercely at Huang Yueli, recalling that just a few days ago, how ecstatic she was from receiving young Master Yuan's invitation as she went around to brag. She never could have imagined that it hadn't been that long before she was slapped on the face alive. Huang Yueli felt her gaze filled with hatred and turned back, curling her lips with a smirk of ridicule. When Li Shuer saw that, she almost fainted with anger. Huang Yueli had accomplished her motive and was not willing to stay for long. Especially after finding out the feelings that Yuan Zheyu had for her, she didn't want to get struck with this trouble, so she replied, I appreciate young Master Yuan's good intentions, but I'm someone who is used to being carefree. My staying here might just offend even more people. Moreover, I'm still busy with my cultivation, so I'd be making a move first. Miss Bai, please wait. Yuan Zheyu wasn't willing to let her leave and hurriedly chased up to her saying, You're my valued guest, so in what way would you offend anyone? Moreover, we will be holding some mini-tournaments as highlights during the banquet, so why not stay and take a look? Li Shuer saw Yuan Zheyu taking the initiative to beseech Huang Yueli to stay and felt even more upset, so she couldn't hold back any longer and walked right up. Young Master Yuan, since Miss Bai is not willing, then why must you force her against her will? Her heart is totally leaning against the heart of cultivation, and she probably don't think much of the other practitioners who would only make merry, assuming that only those hedonistic children who are not interested in improving themselves will attend this kind of banquet. Even if you manage to make her stay, it will only make her feel more disgusted. The things she said was filled with malice and was extremely scheming. On the surface, it seemed like she was helping Huang Yueli to persuade Yuan Zheyu not to force her to stay. But in reality, she was actually drawing more hatred towards Huang Yueli from all sides. Everyone present at the banquet were all making merry, but Li Shuer made Huang Yueli seemed like she was above everyone and wasn't interested in all these. Nor could she be bothered to make friends with them, hence she wasn't willing to stay for the banquet. Didn't that meant that Huang Yueli treated them with disdain as beneath contempt, as she couldn't be bothered to get associated with these people, which was why she wanted to leave? Those present were all descendants of Sky Cloud City's large families and had statuses and abilities. If Huang Yueli were to offend all of them at one go, then in future it would be difficult for her to stay in Sky Cloud City. Perhaps even those who were quick-tempered would make trouble for her. How would Huang Yueli not know what Li Shuer was scheming? Her footsteps halted as she smiled icily at Li Shuer. I cannot take responsibility for the words that senior sister Li had said. Since that's the case, then I shall stay on. Yuan Zheyu immediately broke out in delight as he smiled. That's great, Miss Bai, that you're able to stay. Men, quickly prepare Miss Bai's seat. Li Shuer went into a blank, but following that she clenched hard on her teeth as she realized that she had moved the rock to smash on her own feet. Originally she was prepared to use words to force Huang Yueli to leave and at the same time, spoil her reputation to make Yuan Zheyu and the others believed that although Huang Yueli's ability was strong, but she was an arrogant and brainless person. Whereas while Huang Yueli was not around, she would be able to display her good traits in front of young Master Yuan so as to re-attract his attention. However, the result was Huang Yueli had gone with the flow and stayed on. How would this do? If she stayed on and attracted Yuan Zheyu's attention, then how would young Master Yuan even be able to notice her? Li Shuer? Huang Yueli ignored her embarrassed look as she slowly walked past her and proceeded towards the seat which Yuan Zheyu had prepared for her. Li Shuer turned around and almost went into another fit of anger. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli's seat was actually high up on the stage and was the nearest to Yuan Zheyu's seat. That was the number one guest's position. Only guests of exceptional status was able to take this seat. Although Li Shuer was Yuan Zheyu's female chaperone, she was allowed to sit next to Yuan Zheyu and seemed like the position was much higher than Huang Yueli's seat. But everyone knew that this was only because of young Master Yuan's face. But the seat which Huang Yueli was seated on was a representation of identity and ability. Li Shuer was so enraged that she gritted her teeth. This wretched lass, on what basis did she deserve such treatment? Her background was not even comparable to Li Shuer's. Apparently, not only Li Shuer had this kind of thinking. On seeing Huang Yueli's seat, many of them shot her a weird look. Everyone looked upon the seating arrangement as a very important thing during this kind of large family's formal banquets. This was all arranged based on one's identity and ability, and although Huang Yueli's ability naturally was strong, but to say that she could take the first seat made quite a number of people felt uncomfortable. However, on account of young Master Yuan's face, not many dared to stand out and oppose immediately. The banquet officially started. After 3 rounds of drinking, quite a number of them were tipsy, so the mini-tournaments, which was the highlight of the banquet, was about to start officially. To spar on slightly official banquets was a tradition in Soaring Heaven's continent, and when Huang Yueli was in South Yu Kingdom, the royal banquet which she had attended was so as well. This time, those attending the banquet were all Celestial Light Academy students, and all of them were all outstanding practitioners. Moreover, who didn't want to reveal a hand in front of Sky Cloud City's largest family's descendant, young Master Yuan? If they performed well, perhaps they might be scouted by the Yuan family and soar up into the skies. Because of this, many people had joined in quickly and challenged each other. Huang Yueli was seated in the first seat and propping up her chin, she looked on enthusiastically at the battles below. It must be said that the level of these battles was simply a difference between heaven and earth as compared to those that she had seen at South Yu Kingdom's Peach Blossom Banquet. Skycloud City was famed for plenty of talented practitioners and several battles were worth watching. Celestial Light Academy was really the #1 academy in Skycloud City to be able to recruit so many outstanding students. Huang Yueli was sighing with emotion when she suddenly realized that her surroundings had gone into a weird silence. Not knowing when, the entire banquet hall had turned completely silent as everyone's gazes were thrown towards her side. She was stunned for a moment as she raised up her head. In the middle of the battle stage stood an 18 or 19 young man as he crossed his arms and looked at her coldly. His eyes were long and narrow and his lips were thin, which added some senses of evilness to his looks. He raised his chin as he spoke with an arrogant expression. "By Ruoli, aren't you very arrogant and wild today? Think you're Celestial Light Academy's #1 expert? Since that's the case, do you dare to compete against me?" Huang Yueli's lips slowly curled upwards. "Why? You wish to challenge me?" "Challenge?" The young man replied coldly. "Do you think I'm challenging you? Looks like I've forgotten to introduce myself. My name is Lu Ziju, martial arts stage ranked 3rd. He reported his own family name with a cold and solemn look, thinking that perhaps Huang Yueli would reveal a shocked or anxious expression. Celestial Light Academy's martial arts stage top 10 ranking practitioners were all famous characters in the academy and one which all the students knew. As for him, Lu Ziju, even amongst the top 10 geniuses, he was one of the most outstanding ones. In Celestial Light Academy, his ranking was just one place below Yuan Ziyu, and it was because of the mysterious senior brother Li which made his ranking fell to 3rd place. You can also listen on. But even so, Lu Ziju had self-professed that his reputation was one of Celestial Light Academy's brilliant top exponents, and the minute he declared his name, he would be able to make anyone, other than Yuan Ziyu, broke out into a cold sweat. Saying that, his gaze was affixed onto Huang Yueli. Huang Yueli had indeed gave an astonished expression. "This means you and Lu Zi are..." Lu Ziju gave an evil smile. "He, you finally understand now. Lu Zi is indeed my sister, and although she is someone who is really unworthy of respect, but you have beaten up my sister in front of so many people and that had caused our Lu family to lose face. Even if young Master Yuan doesn't hold you accountable, I cannot let you off. Today, I will definitely not be merciful." Huang Yueli understood in a flash. "So that's the case. I was just thinking, and your sister looked slightly alike. Are you sure you want to challenge me?" "There's absolutely no need to." Lu Ziju swept her one glance. "Why? Afraid? Dare not accept my challenge?" Upon hearing that Huang Yueli's words seemed to have some intention of rejection, he started to become complacent. He knew that this wretched lass would be afraid, would not dare to accept his challenge. To be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that young Master Yuan was so interested in this lass, he wouldn't drive her to such a tight corner, but he would definitely need to regain Lu family's reputation. If this lass did not dare to accept the challenge and was willing to kneel down and officially apologize, then he would forcefully accept it. Lu Ziju was just about to add on something to show off his Lu family's power. But he heard Huang Yueli responded, "I think you must be mistaken. I just wanted to say that since you value Lu family's reputation so much, then why would you come and challenge me? There was a reason for me to beat up Lu Zi, and moreover her innate talent is just SOSO, so I'm assuming that her status in the family isn't very high, so even if she was beaten, it isn't too embarrassing as well. But you're different. If even you are beaten up by me, both members of the Lu family were beaten up at one go, wouldn't it be double embarrassing? Oh, no, not only 2 times. You're the #1 genius that the Lu family is nurturing, so your share of embarrassment would be much more than Li Zi's." Lu Ziju went into a blank as his eyes opened up wide, not believing his ears in that instance. "What did you say?" Huang Yueli laughed as she replied in a lazy manner. "What? Your ears are too well. As a practitioner, if your hearing isn't good, how big of a capability could you have?" Lu Ziju was so infuriated that he almost jumped up. Ever since he had climbed up to martial stage arts rank #3, no one had dared to speak in such a manner to him. Even young Master Yuan himself had always valued his as his right-hand man and wouldn't dare to offend him easily, treating him politely normally. Lu Ziju had long decided that besides Yuan Ziyu, no one else in Celestial Light Academy could possibly exceed him in terms of ability. However, This lass who looked like she was merely 14 or 15 was actually so overbearing and arrogant, as though already deciding that he was totally not her opponent. On what basis did she say that? Lu Ziju's glare became even more sinister as he lowered his tone. Good, very good, extremely good. Looks like, miss, you're full of self-confidence and think that you will be able to defeat me. Looks like you've been muddled by those useless trash, thinking that martial arts stage's top 3's ability is the same as Lei Zichu, that piece of trash? Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite. Even if you're young Master Yuan's valued guest, I must give you an unforgettable lesson. Saying that, he clasped his fist into his other hand towards Yuan Zeyu. Young Master Yuan, it's not that I don't want to give you face, but this Miss Bai is simply too much. You can also listen on. Yuan Zeyu frowned when he heard what he said. Originally, he wished that Huang Yueli and Lu Ziju would not have any conflict. He was most sure of Lu Ziju's ability, and within the entire Celestial Light Academy, the person whom he had fought against the most number of times was him. Although Lu Ziju and him was completely incomparable, but among the same age practitioners, he was indeed worthy of the title of a peerless genius because his ability itself had easily created a huge gap between himself and the 4th-rank practitioner and below. Huang Yueli was able to defeat Lei Zichu, so that showed that her ability naturally was strong enough, but as compared to Lu Ziju, no one could tell who had the lead. He had intended to explain and smoothed the matter over by stopping the battle. But he hadn't expected that Huang Yueli to be so self-confident that not only had she accepted the challenge, she even added fuel to the fire by provoking Lu Ziju. This made Yuan Zeyu extremely surprised. In this way, he didn't really wanted to stop this battle because he also wanted to know if Huang Yueli's ability was really as strong as what she had showed. How much value was she really worth, and if she was able to become a top exponent who was just below him? Yuan Zeyu thought for a moment and said, "The battles during the banquet are casual challenges and there is no restriction on who you are challenging, so what's the talk about not giving me face about? Only, during this banquet, it's not a life and death battle, so will the both of you please start off leniently and not have any situation where either side would incur any serious injury with the main aim as friendly sparring." Lu Ziju sneered, "Young Master Yuan, I cannot guarantee this. After all, when we really cross hands, the blades have no eyes." This, Yuan Zeyu knew that his good friend was really enraged as he tried to persuade further. However, Huang Yueli also responded, "That's right, blades have no eyes, so minor accidents are unavoidable." This made Yuan Zeyu wordless as even Lu Ziju looked over with surprise. "You really have great guts. Too bad you're just overestimating yourself." Huang Yueli replied smilingly, "Really? Don't be too full of yourself. Since you're sure that you can win me, then let's make a bet for good luck. What do you think? You want to place a bet?" Lu Ziju was even more surprised. From what he thought, Huang Yueli was bound to lose for sure. Earlier she was so full of herself. It was probably because she had underestimated him and also because of face. But now she even wanted to bet with him? What kind of joke was that? Was she really so dumb till this extent? Or did she really thought Lu Ziju was some pushover? At that instant, Lu Ziju was so enraged that he couldn't manage his thoughts properly, but very quickly, he trembled with a start and started to become alert. No, something was not right. This should be one of that wretched lass's underhanded method. She wanted to agitate him to make him lose his proper sense of judgment, which would eventually lead him to expose his weakness. This lass really had sinister thoughts, and luckily he had discovered it early. Otherwise, he might just fall into her trap. Thinking of this, Lu Ziju started to calm down as he sneered, "All right, since you want to bet, I'm all right with it too. But what can a lass from a small country like you possibly bring out to gamble? If the stakes are too low, then I'm not willing to play along." He self-professed that he had seen through Huang Yueli's scheme, but never would he had thought that Huang Yueli really wasn't what he had imagined. Her train of thoughts were very, very simple. If she had to waste energy entering a fight, even if it was just 1 or 2 strikes, it would also require her to spend some energy. An unscrupulous businesswoman like her would not wake up early if there were no profits involved. So if she was not able to gain any advantages from making a move, then she would have made a loss. Then she won't even do it. Seeing that Lu Ziju agreed to her terms, Her face was beaming with a brilliant smile immediately. You can also listen on. Her expression changed just too fast. Lu Ziju took a look and immediately the alarms in his heart started ringing. Even though he felt that he probably wouldn't lose, but why was she smiling so happily? Could there be some plot? Huang Yueli was all smiles as she replied, I'd never imagined that young Master Lu's thinking is so in line with mine. I also feel that if the stakes are too low, then what's the point of the gamble? Since we're going to bet, then let's make it a big one. Lu Ziju sneered, you make it sound so simple. Then would Miss Bai please tell me what you're preparing to put up as a stake? This wretched lass really made her words sound so beautiful. Unfortunately, a pauper was still a pauper. What valuable stuff could she possibly had? Could it be that she would bring out all the items that she had used her star currency to exchange as stakes? Lu Ziju was not the only one who thought that way. All the others had the same train of thought as everyone wanted to see what stakes she could possibly offer. No matter what she brought out, it was just incomparable with what the second largest family in Sky Cloud City, Lu family's belonging. Yuan Zheyu had even decided that if the item which Huang Yueli brought out was unpresentable, then the slap on her face would be too much to bear, so he was prepared to give Huang Yueli a gift as the stake. This kind of solicitation, if offered at the right time and place, he wasn't afraid that she would not accept it. Under everyone's witness, Huang Yueli flipped her wrist and brought out something from the Sky Phoenix ring. Just one look and many people cried out in surprise immediately. What? What's that? Am I seeing things? That profound armament's grade seems very high. At least, 4th tier upper grade? You didn't see wrongly. I feel that it's like a 5th tier profound armament. How? How could this be possible? Yuan Zheyu and Lu Ziju also looked shocked as they saw the stake which Huang Yueli placed on the table. That was a 5th tier lower grade profound weapon, and it was not just one piece but an entire set. A total of 12 flying daggers, and every single one was as thin as a cicada's wings. The color and luster was transparent, and even against the backlight, it was almost impossible to see the vestige. So once this was used, it could really be said to be invisible and untraceable. Just one piece of 5th tier profound weapon was priceless. Moreover, this was an entire set made out of 12 flying daggers. Only the words valuable treasure could be used to describe this item. Even the successors of Sky Cloud City's large families, like Yuan Zheyu or Lu Ziju, did not have a single piece of profound armament which was comparable to this item. After all, even Celestial Light Academy's profound weapon chambers only have a few pieces of 5th tier profound armaments, and the grade was the lowest while the quality was one of the worst. At that moment, they were not able to say even one word. A few moments later, Lu Ziju regained his senses and he was filled with excitement. The reason was because he was a practitioner who used flying daggers as his weapon. To him, that set of profound weapon could be said to be made just for him. If he was able to get it, then his potential would definitely leap to another level. He might even had a possibility of defeating young Master Yuan. Even in his wildest dreams, he would never had dreamt of getting such a good item, but now that it suddenly appeared before his eyes, it was like a huge cake dropping down from heaven. Moreover, to get it wasn't difficult at all. Because the new student in front of him was just too young and even her cultivation level was not comparable to his. So if he used some special technique, then naturally he would obtain it easily. Thinking of this, Lu Ziju was unable to control his feelings of excitement. Huang Yueli asked, "How's my steak?" "Enough." Lu Ziju hurriedly responded, "Enough. More than enough. Let's stake on this then. You can also listen on." Huang Yueli smiled as she replied, "Then, young Master Lu, what are you intending to place as stake?" When she said this, it made Lu Ziju perplexed. Initially he had felt that a country bumpkin Huang Yueli would not have anything valuable, so anything that he took out casually would be able to easily dismiss her. In the end, the situation was totally different from what he expected. The young lass had took out such a treasure, a set of 5th tier profound weapon. What kind of treasure would be had to offer to be worthy of this profound weapon's value? Box novel. Lu Ziju pondered for some time and was indecisive. Huang Yueli sniggered secretly and showed a kind-hearted look as she asked, "Young Master Lu, do you have any difficulty? If you feel that the 5th-tier profound armament's value is too high, I can change another stake." "Change another one? How would that do?" Lu Ziju hurriedly stopped her. "Don't. No need to change. The 5th-tier profound armament as a stake is just right. How could the value be too high? It's only that I haven't decided what to set as stake only. Such a suitable profound weapon for himself, how would he let her change it?" This was an excellent piece of profound armament which had not even appeared before in Sky Cloud City's largest auction. Moreover, he himself had exaggerated earlier, saying that the stakes should not be too low. If he agreed to change now, wouldn't it be expression that he agreed to Huang Yueli's words that he could not afford such expensive stakes? In this case, he would be dragging down Lu family's face. His thoughts flew quickly in his mind. The profound weapon which he was currently using was a 4th-tier mid-grade weapon, and his other profound armament and profound artifact were all 4th-tier lower grade. Among the younger generation, he was considered as tycoon level. But this entire set of equipment was not even worth 10% of Huang Yueli's flying dagger set. Even if he were to bring out all his entire spirit stones, it would also not be enough. At this point, a thought suddenly flashed past his mind as he recalled that he was carrying the Lu family's family heirloom cultivation method. This was a set of Earth-grade upper-level cultivation method. The power was extremely strong, and it was one of Lu family's famous cultivation methods. This set of exquisite cultivation methods was not available in Celestial Light Academy's scripture depository, and it was priceless as well. So to use it as a stake against Huang Yueli's flying dagger set, it should be more than enough. But if his family members were to find out that he actually used the exquisite cultivation method which was handed down in the family for generations as a stake, then he would have no way of reconciliation. Lu Ziju was still hesitating when he heard Huang Yueli said, "Young Master Lu, have you considered already? Time spent brewing a pot of tea has passed, and just a small matter like that requires so much time. Are you regretting and not intending to bet anymore? Then it's all right. After all, I'm not like you people in the Lu family. Such a small matter and unable to forgive and forget. If you don't dare, then let's forget it." This was said so beautifully. The other party had regretted, and not only did she not persist, she even didn't require him to apologize. Anyone would stick their thumbs up and praise her, saying she was magnanimous. But in Lu Ziju's ears, it felt like a resounding tight slap on his face. He wasn't able to consider any further as he clenched his teeth and responded, "Who says I haven't considered carefully? I've already decided that my stake will be Earth-grade cultivation method divine martial record." "What? Divine martial record? Young Master Lu is actually going to use divine martial record as a stake? Has he gone mad? Why? What is the divine martial record?" Divine martial record is Lu family's family heirloom cultivation method. Only direct descendants are able to gain access to it. It's not even passed down to the branches. Young Master Lu is actually going to use this as a stake. You can also listen on. Didn't you hear what they were talking about earlier? The profound armament that Bai Ruoli brought out is 5th tier. Moreover, it's an entire set. Besides divine martial record, young Master Lu probably doesn't have any stake of similar value, right? But, that's too rash. That is his family heirloom cultivation method. If he were to lose it, how is young Master Lu going to account for it? Have you gone silly? Would young Master Lu not know the severity of this? It is exactly because of the battle which is why he brought it out. He probably is 100% sure that he will win. As long as he wins this battle, he will not make any losses and he will get back his cultivation method. So it's like this. In actual fact, young Master Lu's ability is definitely much stronger than Bai Ruoli's. Looks like the person who is dumb is not young Master Lu but Bai Ruoli. However, this Bai Ruoli is really wealthy. Is she really born in a small country? She's actually able to bring out an entire set of 5th tier profound armament. Even the number one genius in large families are not as wealthy as her. The crowd were discussing fervently, each sticking to their own opinions. The only thing which they agreed on was the wonderment on Huang Yueli's wealth and influence. Although they were all large families' descendants, but most of them, before today, had not even been able to see a fifth-tier profound armament. After Lu Ziju had finished what he said, he was first flustered as he regretted his rashness. But subsequently, he started to calm down. Right, no matter what he used as a stake, it was still the same. As long as he won the battle, nothing would be lost. As for the young lass in front of him, how could she possibly win him? This was a huge opportunity for him. He didn't needed to spend any money and he could easily obtain a set of profound weapon. He laughed delightfully as he placed the divine martial record onto the table. The stake has been placed, so will Brother Yuan be our witness. Let's start this battle. No problem. Huang Yueli smiled as she stood up. Yuan Zheyu was having the jitters as he felt that this entire matter had broken away from his control and the stakes were too high. Box novel. He had assumed that both of them would at most placed a few hundred thousands of lower-grade spirit stones as a bet, as this amount for large families' descendants was just a small matter. But now, one had come out with a fifth-tier profound weapon while the other had offered his family heirloom cultivation method. If any one of them lost, it was a huge loss which no one was able to handle. And since this battle had happened on the premises of his Yuan family, if something happened, he would definitely be implicated. But at this present moment, there was no way to stop this. The entire banquet hall's atmosphere was fired up as everyone's feelings were lifted. On one hand was the new top student who had newly advanced into the martial arts stage top 10, on the other hand was a veteran top exponent, who had resided as martial arts stage rank number 2 for a long, long time. The two strengths were fighting against each other and was already an attention grabber which involved huge stakes. The two of them walked down from the stage and stopped. Lu Ziju suddenly spoke out, "Miss Bai, I can tell that you're an expert, and since the gambling stakes are so high, if we were to fight as per normal tournaments, then it'd be so boring. Usually among large families' descendants like us, if we were to stake huge bets, then the difficulty of the battle would also increase. I wonder if you dare to accept." Huang Yueli's brows rose as her lips curled up into a slight smile. "Young Master Lu means, how should we compete?" Lu Ziju replied, "You should have seen Celestial Light Academy's Plum Blossom Dome, right? This kind of battle would be to fight it out directly at the Plum Blossom Dome, and to add on to the challenge, both parties must blindfold their eyes." "Oh!" Huang Yueli seemed lost in thought. "You can also listen on." Celestial Light Academy indeed had a Plum Blossom Dome, and that was an array which practitioners used to train on their movements. In the array, there were a total of 36 Plum Blossom Dome poles. It raised high into the sky and each pole was at least 10 meters from the ground. Once the array was activated, each Plum Blossom Dome pole would vary in terms of height as it randomly stretched and shrunk at will. Those practitioners who were training at this place would be required to be agile and move around these ever-changing Plum Blossom Dome poles, otherwise they would fall down the poles. As time passes, the speed the poles took to contract would increase as the practitioners would require faster reaction time. The longer one stays in the array, it only meant that one's movements were much better. Now, Lu Ziju had suggested to battle it out on the Plum Blossom Dome, so that meant both parties must had exceptionally accomplished movements, otherwise even before they started, they would fell from the Plum Blossom Dome. Not only this, they must also avoid the opponent's attacks and simultaneously think of ways to defeat the other party. This difficulty was already very high, but Lu Ziju had raised an even more difficult request. Both parties would have to blindfold their eyes. Just keeping their eyes open to train on the Plum Blossom Dome was tough enough. What more about blindfolding their eyes? Under the circumstances where they were not able to see, to maintain one's balance and not fall down from the poles, to most practitioners, this was an impossible mission. Moreover, they still had to fight against each other. How was this going to be done? The banquet hall went into a bustle once again. Young Master Lu actually requested to fight it out on the Plum Blossom Dome. How is this possible? Why is it not possible? I've heard many people say that young Master Lu is most adept in movements and moreover, he often utilizes the Academy's Plum Blossom Dome to train. Not only does he blindfold his eyes, he sometimes even ties his hands behind his back. This is his speciality. Young Master Lu is so powerful. But how about Bai Ruoli? Surely she cannot be adept at Plum Blossom done as well, right? About this, it can only be said that young Master Lu's move is very sinister. As for this, could that Bai Ruoli really be so strong? Young Master Lu's sinister moves had already been used. Lu Ziju also knew that he was very underhanded, but this time, as he had used his family heirloom cultivation method as a stake, he could not afford to lose. So no matter how those present were to treat him with disdain, he also would not bore the risk of losing. On seeing Huang Yueli keeping silent, he was afraid that she would not agree, as he hurriedly added, "Miss Bai, don't tell me you're really afraid. Aren't you full of yourself and you don't even think anything of us, the honorary association? Since that's the case, just a mere Plum Blossom dome had already scared you off." He wanted to dare her to provoke Huang Yueli's emotions. Huang Yueli clearly knew what he was up to, as she couldn't help but reveal a smile. "Young Master Lu, you don't need to intentionally provoke me. Aren't you just worried about losing? No problem, I'll follow your wishes, so let's fight it out at the Plum Blossom Dome. I will make you concede defeat willingly." After she said that, Lu Ziju started to feel worried again. But no matter how he thought, a special array like the Plum Blossom Dome requires an array master of at least 5th rank and above to set up. This young lass came from a small country, and he gauged that she probably hadn't even seen it before. It was even more impossible that she would be practicing on the Plum Blossom Dome every day. So that was to say that Huang Yueli would definitely lose. She was so pleased with herself as she underestimated him. But later she'd probably not even have the time to cry when she was defeated. You can also listen on. Lu Ziju was worried that she would regret and hurriedly added on, "Since that's the case, I know Yuan family happens to have the Plum Blossom dun array, so let's go over there to battle." Huang Yueli had no objections. Very quickly, they reached a block of extremely high array, and the banquet spectators had all followed them in anticipation. Huang Yueli raised her head and saw the upright and erect poles as the corners of her lips arched upwards. In her previous life, the amount of effort she had spent on the Plum Blossom Dome had not been lesser than anyone. Moreover, the array that she had used to train in Mythical Flame Palace had been reformed, and the speed of contraction was 10 times faster than the speed in Celestial Light Academy. Not only that, every pole was the thickness of a fingernail and had a small holding area, so if there was just a slight deviation, it would result in her having her head broken and blood flowing. So as compared to this array, which had at least half a meter's thickness, the difference as though sky and earth. Lu Ziju was digging his own grave when he wanted to compete on this. She started regretting not putting in more stakes. Lu Ziju was standing by her right as he said, "Junior Sister Bai, let's not waste any more time and start now." Huang Yueli nodded. "All right." For the sake of fairness, 2 guards from the Yuan family stood out of line and helped to blindfold them with several layers of black cloth to ensure that they were completely unable to see anything. The minute the guard turned around, Lu Ziju started to move, and leaping upwards, he jumped onto the shortest pole. With that, he skillfully jumped upwards, layer by layer, as he soared upwards continuously. His feet practically did not stop, and it was merely 10 breaths of time when he had already climbed up to the highest pole. Wow! Young Master Lu is so suave. His movements are really awesome. He seems to be floating on top of the poles. How did he do it? He obviously couldn't see a thing, but he was still able to locate each pole's position. The spectators were gasping in awe as their gazes shot towards Huang Yueli. Lu Ziju had struck first, and just showing off a hand like this had shocked the entire audience. In comparison, Huang Yueli's situation had become much more dangerous. Young Master Lu seems to walk on normal grounds when he's on the Plum Blossom Dome. How will this Miss Bai ever compare to him? She will surely lose, right? Isn't that so? She is still standing below, hesitating, probably not even sure how to go up. Ari, if this carries on, she might as well directly admit her defeat. Otherwise, if they were really to start the battle, she will only be waiting to be abused. If she suffers any serious injury because of this, it's just not worth it. Although it is like that, but she had already placed such a huge stake, and if she had to admit her loss before they even started, will she do such a thing? Everyone was discussing about this, but Huang Yueli seemed to not hear anything at all. She waited for Lu Ziju to stop right at the highest plum blossom dome before her lips curled upwards and her figure flashed as she started to move. Huang Yueli tipped her toes and soared into the sky. Her movements were light and swift as she leapt high up using the wind as an advantage, but unlike Lu Ziju, she didn't step accurately onto the first pole. Bairuoli has not landed properly. Finished, it's finished. The first pole and she landed into empty space. She really doesn't know. Wait, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Heavens, she's going to bang into the wall. Huang Yueli avoided the first pole and didn't even step on the second tallest pole, but directly charged towards the tallest pole, just as everyone was assuming that she was going to bang into the pole and ended up with blood all over her head when suddenly, a change took place. You can also listen on. Not knowing when the plum blossom dome had been activated, all 32 poles within the array's boundary had started moving and the tallest pole suddenly started to descend. Huang Yueli had just leapt into the sky and the tip of her foot coincidentally stepped onto the descending plum blossom dome. How could this happen? She had landed on it. She really landed on it. What's going on? Wasn't she just about to ram into the pole? Why did that pole suddenly descend? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? It must be a coincidence, right? Her luck's not bad after all. Lu Ziju was just on the descending pole and although he couldn't see, but he could clearly felt the vibrations from the profound energy which came from Huang Yueli when she was moving. Not only had she not rammed into the pole, she had instead leapt onto the pole which he was standing on, pouncing towards his direction. Lu Ziju's heart was extremely shocked. Surely it was impossible. Once the array was activated, even he had no way to predict the changes of the ascend and descend of the plum blossom dome, so how did this lass manage to leap up at the right time? Right, it should be a coincidence, luck. That must be it. This lass's luck isn't too bad, but to become a winner would still require real skills, so basing on luck was just not possible for her to succeed. What use was there in just jumping upwards? He only needed to wait for her to be unsteady before he initiated an attack and he would be able to sweep her down in one strike. Lu Ziju's thoughts were flying swiftly past his mind and he had consecutively thrown out several flying daggers, attacking towards Huang Yueli's upper, middle and lower body. His moves were very fast and accurate and more importantly, the purity of his profound energy was extremely strong. The flyer daggers broke out in space and sped towards Huang Yueli. The spectators below the platform could see it clearly and although Lu Ziju was not able to see, but the direction that he sent his flying daggers had not deviated one bit and had exactly blocked all avenues where Huang Yueli could hide. Moreover, the speed of the flying daggers was so fast. Heavens! She's finished. Under this kind of circumstances, everyone had thought that Huang Yueli was unable to avoid and the best possibility was to avoid her vital organs. She was bound to be hurt and moreover, Lu Ziju would definitely take this opportunity to pursue an attack in order to throw her onto the ground. Huang Yueli seemed to be scared stiff as she remained motionless. Just as the winner and loser was about to be decided. At this moment, that plum blossom dome suddenly moved again and subsequently descended by a huge chunk once again. Huang Yueli's body naturally descended with the pole as the few powerful flying daggers followed the direction of the wind and just narrowly flew past the top of her head by merely an inch of a distance. Although it looked terrifying but not even one strand of her hair had dropped. 4. Missed again. The battle at the plum blossom dome is really ever-changing. This time I thought she would definitely be hit but in the end, changes happened again. This is simply unimaginable. Lu Ziju heard the spectators' discussions and realized that his ultimate strike missed its target. He was extremely frustrated and at the same time, he could not take it lying down. What on earth happened? Why did the poles suddenly descend again as this fraudulent array saved that lass's life once again? Her luck was just too ridiculously good. Just as Lu Ziju was feeling melancholic, he suddenly felt a huge profound energy coming from the top of his head. I say, young Master Lu, you're in the middle of a battle so how can you go into a daze? Earlier you had already struck so now, it's my turn. A young lady's sweet voice resounded. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.